Chapter 944. Tang Zheng subconsciously soared into the air, dodging the magma like molten iron on the ground. A wave of heat rushed over as the 7 assassins stabbed over with their fiery red swords. The blood-like fiery red sword light stung people's eyes. Tang Zheng squinted his eyes, and the War Soul Sword also released a dazzling light. Clang! The two swords clashed and sparks flew everywhere. A few sparks landed on Tang Zheng's clothes and immediately ignited. Tang Zheng immediately circulated his energy to extinguish the flames. The War Soul Sword in his hand danced, and a sword light scattered down, blocking all the flames outside his body. 7 Kills bared his teeth as he looked at Tang Zheng. He knew very well that he was burning his life force, but so what? He was going to die together with him. The reason why his fighting strength could increase by so much in an instant was all because of the Rising Sun Sword technique that he cultivated. This sword technique was extremely masculine and unyielding. After forcefully enduring the pain and holding onto a fiery red sword, all of his energy and inner strength were channeled into the sword. Instead, he in this unfinished sword had reached the realm of becoming one with the sword, perfectly displaying the power of the Rising Sun Sword technique. Clang! Another sword strike. The War Soul Sword was undamaged, but a gap appeared on the other sword. Tang Zheng laughed coldly. How could an unfinished sword be compared to the War Soul Sword? 7 Kills was also very clear about the situation. Looking at the broken sword in his hand, he gritted his teeth and cut open his other palm. Blood seeped out from his palm and dripped onto the broken sword. The blood and the broken sword merged into one, and the broken sword emitted waves of scarlet light. Tang Zheng's pupils constricted. He knew that 7 Kills was making his last gamble, so he took the initiative to attack. 7 Kills quickly retreated, retreating again and again. Fresh blood completely fused into the broken sword as if it was free. The broken sword's light shone brightly, instantly enveloping him. Bang! 7 Kills retreated to the front of the furnace and stepped on the molten iron. However, he did not notice that the molten iron had corroded his shoes and feet, revealing his white bones. He only stared straight at Tang Zheng, and the corner of his mouth revealed a trace of a smile. It was incomparably sinister, causing one's heart to turn cold. Tang Zheng, do you think that I am courting death by leading you into the sword furnace? Ah, you're too naive. I said that I'll take you down with me. That's why I'm confident. 7 Kills laughed maniacally. I don't see how you can take me down with you, Tang Zheng retorted. Really? Then do you think this sword furnace is really a broken thatched hut? 7 Kills pointed around and asked jokingly. Tang Zheng's heart skipped a beat. He looked around. This sword furnace contained sword intent. This was the place where the sword god used to comprehend sword techniques, so it was not surprising that it contained sword intent. It seems like you have seen through some clues, but without my guidance you definitely wouldn't have known. The name Divine Sword Peak is not a random name. The sword intent in the sword furnace is naturally emitted. Back then, Master saw through this point, which is why he chose to comprehend the sword again, build the sword furnace and forge the treasured sword, because... He purposely stopped and looked at Tang Zheng with a meaningful gaze. Because what? Tang Zheng asked curiously, and his interest was indeed piqued by 7 Kills. Because there is indeed a divine sword hidden in the Divine Sword Peak, but the divine sword is formless, only the sword intent, and the essence of the sword intent is all gathered in this sword furnace. Other than Master, only senior brother Jian Shirsan and I know this secret. Song Yu, that cowardly fellow, does not know. This sword intent is the foundation of why the Sword Pavilion is called the Sword Pavilion. 7 Kills said with pride. Tang Zheng subconsciously looked towards the ground, where he stepped on a small piece of empty land that was not covered by molten iron. He could clearly feel the sword intent. However, the sword intent was too scattered, as if it had become one with the mountain peak. What use could it have? Master once wanted to forge a peerless divine sword, and had already thought of a way to absorb this sword intent from the Divine Sword Peak. Unfortunately, he did not manage to wait for this day. What Master has not done, I will do for you. As soon as he finished speaking, the broken sword in his hand fiercely stabbed into the ground. The broken sword pierced into the rocks on the ground all the way to the hilt. In that instant, the aura within the sword furnace changed drastically. All of the scattered sword intent quickly condensed and fused into the broken sword. Tang Zheng's pupils constricted as he shouted, "Oh no!" and hurriedly slashed out with his sword, aiming for Qi Sha's head with a heavy force. If he was hit, 7 Kills would probably be cut into 2 halves. 7 Kills revealed a sinister smile and said, "It's already too late." Bang! The War Soul Sword slashed through the air, but was blocked by an invisible force. Tang Zheng was shocked. He understood that this was the work of the sword intent. Aha, I understand now. The momentum is unstoppable. Tang Jing, prepare to die. 7 Kills laughed wildly, holding the sword hilt with both hands. He roared, rise? Ka. The broken sword rubbed against the rocks, making a strange sound. In the end, the broken sword was completely pulled out. The fiery red sword looked as if it was forged from blood. The divine sword has been formed. Quickly die. The broken sword roared and raised both of its hands. Its entire body seemed to be on fire. Its eyes turned fiery red and its clothes emitted bursts of green smoke. As one with the sword, he bathed in the sword light. It was incomparably resplendent and slowly rose into the sky, as if it was really a rising sun. Tang Jing was an expert in the way of the sword, so when he saw this scene he immediately understood the power behind it. He hurriedly activated his cultivation, causing his innate qi to surge. The War Soul Sword was good at absorbing yin qi, so it emitted a cold yin qi that enveloped Tang Jing. Kill? 7 Kills roared and turned into a ray of sword light. As one with the sword, he slashed towards Tang Jing. Tang Jing's eyes were bright and full of expression. Holding the sword with both hands, he watched as the fiery red sword light got closer and closer. Suddenly, a thought flashed through his mind and he subconsciously brandished the War Soul Sword. The War Soul Sword drew a beautiful arc. It seemed slow and gentle, but it accurately caught the broken sword. Clang. A wave of sword chi surged out, but neither of them retreated. Instead they clenched their teeth. Tang Jing was surprised to recall that his previous strike was not the heaven-flying immortal sword technique, but the second move of the Taiji two-form sword technique. Back then he had learned a total of 2 moves, but he immediately forgot about them. He did not expect that the second move would appear on its own, causing him to subconsciously use it. The 2 swords were in a deadlock, but Tang Jing's mind flashed with a flash of inspiration. He actually learned the third move in a split second. Previously he had always wanted to learn the third move, but he had never succeeded. He did not expect that he would actually succeed this time. He really could not understand this sword technique. But now was not the time to think about this. He had just learned it, and before he forgot it he immediately used it. The War Soul Sword swung to the left as if there was a huge force pulling the broken sword to the left, and then to the right, drawing a large circle. A surge of energy immediately emerged from the circle. From the inside to the outside, from the bottom to the top, like a fountain, it soared into the sky. Boom. With a loud sound, the energy collided with the broken sword. The 2 swords were knocked away and the 2 people flew backwards. Gotcha. The gap on the broken sword grew bigger and bigger, like a spider web rapidly spreading out. In an instant, it covered the entire sword body, and then collapsed, turning into pieces that scattered on the ground. The light on 7 Kills disappeared as well. His entire body seemed to have been sucked dry of blood. He was extremely thin, his body was like firewood, and his eye sockets were deep. He was like a completely different person from before. Tang Jing was also shocked by this scene. The power of the broken sword was actually so great, and the backlash to its owner was so terrifying. Impossible, how could this be? 7 Kills looked at the pieces on the ground in a daze, as well as the monstrous sword chi released from the broken sword. He danced around as if he wanted to gather the sword chi. However, how could the formless sword chi gather towards him? It was all futile. But he was like a madman running around the room. Not long after, his body was set on fire, but he did not know. Tang Jing secretly shook his head. This person had gone crazy. However, when he recalled the third move, he could not help but be deeply shocked by its power. But he was also dismayed to find that the third move had mysteriously disappeared from his mind, and he had no impression of how to use it at all. Sigh. He faintly sighed. This Taiji two-form sword technique was too strange. For a moment he could not figure it out. Suddenly, the war spirit sword trembled without any warning, and the sword spirit's voice sounded in his mind. Master, quickly absorb these sword chi. Otherwise they will be wasted after they spread out. Tang Jing was overjoyed. He had actually neglected these precious sword chi. They were already ownerless, so how could he waste them? He immediately activated his power, causing the war spirit sword to shine brightly, and with a so sound, it flew into the air. Waves of sword chi seemed to have found their loved ones and quickly gathered in the air. Whoosh whoosh. The war spirit sword continued to absorb, and the light became more and more intense, dazzling the eyes. Tang Jing was secretly delighted. The war spirit sword had a sword spirit, and was indeed extraordinary. Otherwise, without the sword spirit's reminder, he would have forgotten about this. With the sword spirit absorbing the sword intent on its own, he turned his attention to 7 kills and discovered that he had already fallen to the ground. His body was burning with flames, emitting crackling sounds, and was on the verge of death. Tang Jing shook his head and said, "You also hate Song Yu for betraying Sword Pavilion? I will get him to see you as soon as possible, so that you two can reunite." I can't accept this. I will kill you." 7 Kill's throat still emitted intermittent sounds, his killing intent still did not weaken. Tang Jing shook his head and said, "If the Sword God was here to absorb the sword intent of the Divine Sword Peak, then what he forged would be a peerless divine sword, and what you forged at the last minute is only a poor quality one, which is why you were defeated by my War Spirit Sword." Chapter 945. Hearing Tang Jing's analysis, 7 Kills roared unwillingly, but his voice suddenly stopped. His head heavily hit the ground and then there was no more sound. 7 killed. Tang Jing shook his head, and then placed his attention on the War Soul Sword above his head. The War Soul Sword had already absorbed all the sword intent in the sword furnace, and the light suddenly converged and then instantly exploded. A glaring sword light lit up, and Tang Jing subconsciously closed his eyes. When he opened them, he discovered that there was an additional person in front of him. No, this was not a real person because there was no trace of life. It was as if it was formed from interweaving light and shadow. This person's face had a vaguely familiar outline. When Tang Jing moved his head, he immediately recognized it and exclaimed, "War Soul." This person was actually a miniature version of the War Soul. Back then, the War Soul was just a Yin Soul, ferocious and terrifying with a huge body. Now that he had returned to the size of a normal person, Tang Jing was actually unable to recognize him. Ever since the War Soul Sword absorbed the Sword Soul and fused with the Sword Soul, the War Soul had never appeared again. Tang Jing thought that it would never appear again, but he never thought that it would appear again. "Master, I am the Sword Soul," the other party said methodically. "Sword One Soul?" Tang Jing was stunned. "You can actually leave the War Soul Sword?" The Sword Soul nodded. "Yes, I merged with the original War Soul and became like this. It's just that my appearance is the original War Soul." Tang Jing suddenly realized that the Sword Soul was the War Soul. There was no difference. He was overjoyed and subconsciously extended his hand, wanting to touch the other party, but discovered that his hand had directly passed through the Sword Soul's body. He was shocked and hurriedly asked what was going on. The Sword Soul was not surprised and said, "Master, after I absorbed those sword intents, I used them to condense them. However, I am not a real entity, I am just a strand of sword intent." Tang Jing patted his head. So that was how it was, but even so, the shock it gave him could be imagined. "Then what can you do?" Tang Jing calmed down and asked curiously. The sword spirit thought for a while, then gently tapped the ground with his finger. The War Soul Sword that was floating in the air did not move at all, but the rocky ground immediately cracked open, as if it was split open by a sword. Tang Jing sucked in a breath of cold air. The power of the sword spirit was indeed extraordinary, and it could attack autonomously. In other words, when he fought with others in the future, the sword spirit could leave the Battle Soul Sword and catch the enemy off guard. "Master, as long as you think about it, I can attack the enemy without the help of the War Soul Sword's main body," the sword spirit added. Tang Jing nodded happily and praised loudly, "Good, good, good. Tang Jing, what do you think of my gift to you?" Chiyu's voice rang out. Back then in the sky pit in the northeast, it was with his help that the War Soul Sword was able to fuse with the Sword Soul. Otherwise, with Tang Jing's strength, how could he have succeeded in something that even the Sword God could not do? Tang Jing understood this very well, so he was not stingy with his praise for Chiyu. "This gift is very good. I like it very much. Thank you." "Haha, inner demons, did you hear that? How can your mind assimilating technique be compared to the sword spirit? The sword spirit will be of great use to Tang Jing in the future." Chiyu proudly showed off. The inner demons coldly snorted and retorted, "My mind assimilating technique is stronger than your sword spirit. You're a stubborn duck." Tang Jing, let me tell you, as the quality of the War Soul Sword increases, the sword spirit will also evolve. In the end, it can even evolve into a physical body. You should be very clear about what this means." Chiyu said as if he was asking for credit. Tang Jing was in full bloom. Of course he understood what this meant. If the sword spirit really evolved into a physical body, then it would be like a sword expert. This kind of expert was condensed from sword intent, and he could not imagine how high his achievements would be in the future. A person's every word and action, even a frown, was a sword intent. If he wanted to kill someone, he didn't even need to attack. The air could be condensed into a sharp sword by him and take his head. He stared at the sword spirit without blinking. It was hard to imagine what kind of scene it would be when that day came. However, there was no doubt that the sword spirit was under his control. Jiyu, thank you. He sincerely thanked him. Ah, you're welcome. This way you'll know that I'm really good to you. I'm not like some people who only talk about it but don't practice it. It's just a little bit of profit, yet they dare to brag all day long. Jiyu did not let go of this opportunity to attack the inner demons. The inner demons was silent. He sulked and did not say a word. Tang Jing secretly rejoiced. Inner demons, you better find a big benefit for me and then counterattack Jiyu. This way you can get back at me. However, my benefits are great. Master, I'm still weak for the time being. I can't stay outside for too long. I want to return to the war spirit sword. The sword spirit said. Tang Jing happily nodded his head. Then hurry up and go in. Don't hurt yourself. With a flash of light, the sword spirit disappeared. It turned into thousands of sword intents and merged into the war spirit sword. The war spirit sword automatically flew back into Tang Jing's hands. The sword spirit's voice sounded in his mind. Master, the war spirit sword's power has increased greatly. The power of your heaven-flying immortal sword technique will also increase by a lot. Hearing this, Tang Jing secretly nodded his head. He held the sword hilt and with a thought, he used the heaven-flying immortal sword technique. In an instant, a dazzling sword light broke through the air. Boom! With a loud bang, the sword furnace exploded. It was already in a dilapidated state, and after being burned by the fire, it was as if it had been hit by a cannonball. It exploded from the inside, and debris flew in all directions, filling the sky. Empyrean Fairy and the rest had been staring at the sword furnace the entire time, especially Wu. Just now, Tang Jing had saved her and rushed into the sword furnace for her. When she heard the sounds of fighting coming from inside, her heart was in her throat. She really wanted to rush in and help Tang Jing, but was stopped by Empyrean Fairy. Empyrean Fairy said that this was a rare opportunity for Tang Jing to deal with it himself, and that there would definitely be no danger. Tian Chanzi also said the same thing. Although Wu was extremely worried, he could only stare at the sword furnace. Lan Yu held her husband's hand tightly with one hand and covered her chest with the other, feeling the intense heartbeat coming from her chest. She was the same as Wu, but after hearing the words of Empyrean Fairy and Tian Chanzi, she endured it. Moreover, she believed in the words of the two and she believed in Tang Jing's strength even more. Seeing the sword furnace ignite with raging flames and the terrifying sword intent that blotted out the sky and covered the earth being released, Lan Yu and Wu almost couldn't help but rush over. The strength of this sword intent caused Tian Chanzi's eyebrows to twitch a few times. He smacked his lips a few times and sighed, "The world is big, there are all sorts of strange things. So that's how it is. I was wondering why this mountain was so strange, so it actually contained such a powerful sword intent." But he still did not move, and Empyrean Fairy was even calmer, so the others did not dare to act rashly. In the end, with a loud explosion, the sword furnace turned into ruins and flew in all directions. Empyrean Fairy stood at the very front. With a wave of her small hand, a gust of wind blew out. The ruins were completely blocked outside, unable to harm them in the slightest. Tang Jing felt his eyes light up and everything suddenly became clear. The mountain breeze blew past his face and seeing everyone looking at him with a burning gaze, he could not help but smile and say, "I'm fine." Wu Fei threw himself into his embrace and said with lingering fear, "It's good that you're fine." Tang Jing ignored everyone's strange gazes and felt her concern and love from the bottom of her heart. He lovingly caressed her hair and said, "I'm fine, don't worry, how could 7 kills hurt me?" Wu Chui said angrily, "It's all because I'm useless. I've practiced the Fire Nether Divine Palm for so long, but I still can't beat 7 kills. Tang Jing shook his head and explained, "No, you've already defeated him. It's just that he used the method of burning his life force, and the sword furnace was filled with boundless sword intent. In that instant, his fighting strength had already risen to the Grandmaster realm, so of course you're not his match." Wu thought for a while, then revealed a knowing smile, "That's good." Cough. Wu Junshan coughed dryly, interrupting their kiss. Wu Junshan's face turned red, and she quickly left his embrace. Lan Yu glared at her husband with hidden bitterness, as if she was complaining about how he had disturbed their good fortune. Wu Junshan helplessly rolled his eyes. Empyrean Fairy did not care about the subtle relationship between the few of them. She stared straight at the War Soul Sword in his hand and asked, "Your War Soul Sword has undergone a change, what exactly happened?" Tang Jing smiled faintly, he did not hide anything and told her everything that had happened in the sword furnace. Everyone was dumbstruck when they heard this. Their hearts trembled in fear, especially Wu. He subconsciously tightened his grip on Tang Jing's hand, unwilling to let go. This time it was a rare time for her and Tang Jing to be alone, so she actually cherished this period of time. Moreover, everyone already knew about her relationship with Tang Jing, so why hide it? She was not the kind of girl who was shy, so she might as well be magnanimous. She did not want to take advantage of Li Xiaotian, who was always by Tang Jing's side. She subconsciously looked at Li Xiaotian and discovered that she was staring at Tang Jing with shining eyes. It was as if his words had a huge attraction that made her unwilling to move her gaze away. Wu's heart skipped a beat, and he subconsciously grabbed onto Tang Jing's hand. Suddenly he had a subtle feeling. Could it be? She hurriedly shook her head. No, although she had changed her appearance and become a new person, she definitely could not have any intimate relationship with Tang Jing. She had to take on the responsibility of supervising him. The others' attention was attracted by everything that had happened in the sword furnace. They were unable to calm down for a long time, especially Tian Chanzi. He looked at the War Soul Sword and said, "So you're saying that your War Soul Sword has evolved, and the sword spirit can already leave the War Soul Sword's body?" This was something he had never heard of before. Even the most powerful divine sword he had ever seen did not have such an ability. Tang Jing nodded. Tian Chanzi sighed in his heart. This was truly the Yangtze River's waves behind the waves. He was afraid that before long, the waves in front of him would be smacked onto the beach. Chapter 946. The Empyrean Fairy lightly said, "Tang Jing, the sword soul can leave the battle soul sword body. This is already a 1 in 10,000 chance, but if you want to obtain the physical body you speak of, this is a very long road. In any case, according to what I know, the number of people in this world who can do this can be counted on one hand." Tang Jing's enthusiasm was not extinguished. He still happily said, "Even so, I have already taken the first step. In the future it is only a matter of time." Seeing him so confident, the Empyrean Fairy did not say anything more. Moreover, this was indeed a good thing. Lan Yu was more excited than the others, his eyes shining as he looked at his son and praised, "I believe you can do it." Wu Junshan also looked at Tang Jing with gratification. On the way here, he once again personally felt that Tang Jing was not ordinary. This feeling was even more profound than the last time he was in the island nation. "Thank you." Tang Jing politely nodded towards them. Although he felt a little unfamiliar, it was still much better than before, making Lan Yu and Wu Junshan very happy. Li Xiaotian realized that other than herself, the others were all concerned about Tang Jing. Her bright eyes could not help but dim as she gradually lowered her head. No one knew what she was thinking. "Since Song Yu and the other sword slaves have already escaped, what do we do now?" Tian Chanzi asked. Sigh. Tang Jing muttered to himself for a moment, then said, "Sword Pavilion no longer exists, even though Song Yu is not dead, but since he has escaped, we will definitely not be able to find him in a short period of time, so there is no need to waste time on him. Let's follow the established itinerary and head to Li Palace." Li Palace had already taken root in a new place. This was the information that Li Xiaotian read in her mind. Since Sword Pavilion no longer existed, Li Palace naturally could not let it go. They had to quickly cut the Gordian knot and take advantage of this momentum to exhaust the strength of the Azure Dragon Hall and the other large organizations. Li Xiaotian already knew that she was from the Li Palace, so when she heard that they were going to attack the Li Palace, her heart couldn't help but tighten. Her expression became panicked, but she quickly regained her composure. She secretly warned herself that since she had decided to sever all ties with the past, this trip to the Li Palace was necessary. In fact, she could only be considered to have truly severed all ties with her former self after this trip. Tang Jing noticed something wrong with Li Xiaotian and asked, "Are you okay?" Li Xiaotian shook her head and said, "I'm fine." She paused for a moment and said hesitantly, "Tang Jing, I have a presumptuous request." "What is it?" "Just tell me. If I can do it, I will definitely not refuse." Hearing this, everyone looked at her curiously. With regards to Li Xiaotian, everyone's feelings towards her were rather complicated. However, in general they had already forgiven her. They didn't know that she would make such a presumptuous request. Wu's heart tightened as she stared straight at Li Xiaotian, afraid that she would say something that would make her worried. "You said before that I originally knew martial arts, but I lost my memory, so I even forgot my martial arts. Then, can you think of a way to help me recover my martial arts?" Li Xiaotian looked at Tang Jing expectantly, afraid that he would refuse or say that he was powerless. Tang Jing was silent, because he didn't know if he could do it. This was a situation that he had never encountered before. Seeing Tang Jing's reaction, Li Xiaotian's eyes dimmed, the corner of her mouth revealed a bitter smile and said, "If there's no other way, then forget it. This is just a fool's dream." This is the punishment given to me by the heavens and I am willing to accept it. Don't worry. Seeing her so pessimistic, Tang Jing hurriedly comforted her. I didn't say that there's absolutely no way, it's just that this is the first time I've encountered such a thing, so I can't think of a good idea right now. But since your martial arts are still in your body, then there must be a way to reactivate it. Tang Jing recalled the scene of the car accident when she saved the little girl. He could confirm that her martial arts were still there, but she needed a trigger condition. Li Xiaoyan's heart was once again ignited with the flames of hope and said, "Really? That's great. In any case, we still have a long way to go to the Li Palace. On the way, I will think about it carefully and find a way," Tang Jing said truthfully. Li Xiaotian jumped up in excitement, and couldn't help but throw herself into his embrace. In an instant, the divine sword peak became completely silent, leaving only the whistling of the wind. Tang Jing's expression stiffened. He never thought that Li Xiaoyan's reaction would be so big. He almost didn't have time to react before he felt a warm and soft body being stuffed into his embrace. He could even clearly feel the soul-stirring elasticity of her chest. Wu originally held onto Tang Jing's hand, and when he saw Li Xiaotian throw herself into his embrace, his eyes widened. The thing he was most worried about had happened. She actually took the initiative to throw herself into his embrace. This was too shameless. Wu Junshan and Lan Yu looked at each other, as if they didn't expect such a thing to happen. The enemy throwing herself into one's embrace was something that only happened in movies. How could it happen in reality, and it even happened to their son? This was truly a headache. Tian Chanzi, on the other hand, had an indifferent expression. He looked at Tang Jing with a smile that wasn't a smile. Empyrean Fairy was indifferent, as if all of this had nothing to do with her. Tang Jing wasn't in the mood to enjoy this beauty's grace. Moreover, he also felt strange in his heart. After all, he and Li Xiaotian had been opposing each other for so long, and he wasn't a beast. As long as a woman threw herself into his arms, he would like it, so he pushed her out of his embrace and said calmly, "When I find a way, I will naturally help you." Li Xiaotian nodded his head continuously, the smile on his face becoming more and more brilliant. "Let's go." Tang Jing turned around and left, holding onto Wu's hand. He had seen Wu's reaction just now, so of course he could not provoke her at this time. Otherwise he would not be able to walk in the end, and he did not want his backyard to be on fire because of Li Xiaotian. Sure enough, seeing him tightly holding onto her hand, Wu's expression became much better. She meaningfully glanced at Li Xiaotian, then obediently accompanied Tang Jing down the mountain peak. The two of them took the lead and walked at the front, leaving the others a distance behind. Li Xiaotian fiercely twisted his arm and complained, "She threw herself into your arms just now. Are you very happy?" Tang Jing couldn't help but laugh. The usually carefree Wu was actually jealous. Women's bones were indeed not much different. "You're still laughing. You must be secretly happy, right?" Wu said bitterly. Tang Jing retracted his smile and hurriedly explained, "You are wronging me. I saw that you were beautiful, so I smiled at you. I didn't smile because of Li Xiaoyan's hug." Wu heaved a sigh of relief in his heart, and his face immediately revealed it. Although her martial arts were strong in terms of meticulousness and shrewdness, she could not compare to Yi Dingdang. If Yi Dingdang were to encounter such a situation, even if he was very happy in his heart, he would definitely keep a straight face on the surface. Seeing her reaction, Tang Jing felt relieved. Taking advantage of the fact that no one was around, he turned his head and kissed her. The two of them were about the same height, so he did not need to bend down. He only needed to turn his head to kiss her cheek. Immediately, 2 red clouds flew up on her face. She was extremely shy. On the battlefield, she was a decisive expert. But in front of love, she was still no different from an ordinary girl. She raised her fist as if massaging it and hit Tang Jing's body. She said coquettishly, "You are too bad. Everyone else is watching." Tang Jing chuckled, "They are still behind. How can they see? Moreover, even if they see, they will pretend not to see. They will definitely understand the principle of not looking." Flowery words, sophistry. Wu glared at him and said, "You don't want me to say it? Then I'll go tell the person behind me." Tang Jing rolled his eyes and said with a mischievous smile, "You dare." Wu immediately widened his eyes and glared at him like a tiger eyeing its prey. Tang Jing laughed out loud and quickly kissed her again. This time he kissed her lips, causing her entire body to tremble. She could not help but lean against him tightly, her entire body going soft. Tang Jing directly hugged her waist. She struggled a few times, but was unable to escape from his clutches, so she let him do whatever he wanted. Although she was shy in her heart, she enjoyed it very much. Occasionally, she would glance back and see that the others were still far away. She could not help but heave a sigh of relief. At least they did not see her embarrassed state. The road down the mountain was not long, and the two of them enjoyed a rare intimate time. By the time they reached the foot of the mountain, Wu's face was already red and he was panting. If it wasn't for the fact that this place was not suitable, the two of them would have already fought for 300 rounds. Wu did not want the others to catch up and discover his embarrassing state, so he immediately pulled away from Tang Zheng and circulated his energy to calm his surging emotions. His cheeks and breathing slowly returned to normal. The others finally caught up. Although they discovered that the two of them had normal expressions as if nothing had happened, they knew that something must have happened between the two of them. They deliberately pretended not to know and did not point it out. However, Lan Yu looked at Wu with eyes full of praise and encouragement. He thought to himself that it was not a waste of his daily guidance. This girl had finally become enlightened. There were too many women in the family, and it was impossible to spread the rain and dew evenly. This was a rare time to be alone, and if he was still hesitant, it would be snatched away by others, such as Li Xiaotian. She subconsciously looked at Li Xiaotian, but found that his expression was normal, as if nothing had happened. Her heart was moved. Li Xiaotian had always been known for his intelligence and cunning. Although she had lost her memories, this kind of nature still existed. In terms of scheming, he would probably surpass Wu. She immediately felt a sense of danger. She had to keep a good relationship between her son and Wu. She could not really let Li Xiaotian snatch her son away. Moreover, the Holy Maiden of Li Palace had also cultivated charm techniques. In terms of dealing with men, she was even more formidable. Many women could not compare to her. Chapter 947. The chirping of birds and the fragrance of flowers, untainted by the mortal world. The scene in front of them was such a scenery, making one feel relaxed and happy. But the more beautiful something was, the more dangerous it was. Tang Zheng firmly believed in this point, so his mind became vigilant. Moreover, after his last visit to the Li Palace, he was even more afraid of the methods of the Li Palace. At this very moment they stood in front of the new Li Palace. Just like the previous Li Palace, it was magnificent and enchanting. Perhaps this had to do with the fact that the Li Palace was filled with women who liked these flowers and plants. Li Xiaotian stared blankly at this scene. She had no impression of this. Although she felt that it was beautiful, she subconsciously felt a sense of danger. She subconsciously warned, "This place is very dangerous. Everyone must be careful." Hearing her say this, the others dared not underestimate them. After all, this was the Li Palace, where Wuxia's intelligence network was the most advanced. Moreover, the Li Palace's palace master, Granny Li, was the most sinister and cunning. Her territory was not a place that an ordinary person could set foot in. This was still a mountain valley. On both sides of the valley were layers upon layers of mountains, but they were like two slender and elegant women guarding the entrance to the valley. With Li Xiaotian's experience, Tang Zheng walked along a special winding path with great familiarity. The others cautiously followed behind him. Sense Sigma. There's an array set up in this mountain valley. If an ignorant person were to recklessly charge in, they would fall into the array. As Tang Zheng walked, he explained. He couldn't help but recall those bathing women he had met in the Li Palace. That was an illusion created by the fragrance of the flowers on the mountain that confused one's mind. This time they were familiar with the path and no similar situation occurred. When they passed through the long entrance to the valley and arrived at its center, the scene before them was even more beautiful and moving. It was like a paradise. Tang Zheng thought that the Li Palace was truly formidable. It was actually able to find such a beautiful place in the middle of these rolling mountains. If this place was developed into a tourist attraction, the people of the country would probably flock to it like a flock of ducks. He shook his head, casting aside these random thoughts and focusing his attention on the front. There were no lofty palaces here, only small bridges and flowing water. In the distance there were many wooden houses. It was like a village with a few scattered women walking through them. Suddenly an ear-piercing voice soared into the sky. Tang Zheng cried out in alarm. Just as expected, although they had successfully passed through the valley, the moment they appeared in the middle of the valley, they were still discovered by the vigilant Li Palace disciples. Whoosh whoosh whoosh, a series of whistling sounds came from afar, and a group of people rushed in front of them in the blink of an eye, blocking their way. Suddenly, a cry of surprise rang out from the crowd. Everyone looked at Li Xiaotian in surprise and subconsciously shouted, "Saintess, why are you back? You're not dead?" The disciples of the Li Palace had also been misled by the news sent back by Song Yu, mistakenly believing that Li Xiaotian had already died in the battle for the imperial city. They had never expected that he would once again stand in front of them, alive and well. Their faces immediately lit up with joy as they welcomed her warmly and cheered, "Saintess, everyone thought you had died. If the palace master knew you were still alive, he would definitely be very happy." Looking at these familiar faces, Li Xiaotian didn't know how to respond. He stood there in a daze, not knowing what to do. "Wait a moment." An ear-piercing voice rang out from the crowd. A woman stepped forward and pointed at Tang Zheng's group, asking, "Why are they here? These people are all enemies, and there are even men." The Li Palace had a rule that forbade men from setting foot in. If a man did, there was only one outcome: death. Moreover, although these people had never personally seen Tang Zheng's group, they were still intelligence collectors, so they had seen their pictures and recognized them at a glance. These were enemies, so why had they appeared in the Li Palace? And why had they appeared together with the Saintess? They immediately sensed something strange. "Saintess, just what is going on?" They subconsciously took a step back and warily asked. On the way here, Li Xiaotian had already learned a great deal about her relationship with the Li Palace, and she also understood that she was the Li Palace's Saintess. When she heard the crowd's questions, she was at a loss at first, her mind in a mess, but for some reason she was quick-witted and quickly calmed down. As if this place had triggered a nerve in her, the panic in her eyes disappeared in a flash, replaced by an unrestrained sharpness. Without being angry, she took a large step forward, eyeing the crowd like a tiger eyeing its prey. Seeing her overbearing gaze, the crowd subconsciously averted their gazes, not meeting her gaze. After all, her usual dignity was still there, deeply imprinted in their bones. Tang Zheng had originally believed that he had been exposed, so a fight was unavoidable. Now that he saw Li Xiaotian's reaction, he actually had the misconception that the decisive and ruthless Saintess of the Li Palace had returned. But he was not in a hurry to make a move, and instead quietly observed the situation. The others also curiously looked at Li Xiaotian. On the way here, because of Wu and Tang Zheng, Li Xiaotian had become much quieter. Although she would occasionally raise a few questions about herself and the Li Palace, there was nothing out of the ordinary. Li Xiaotian swept her sharp gaze across the crowd and said, "My matters, when did you have the right to question them?" This voice was not loud, but it was filled with an unquestionable dignity, causing everyone to be subconsciously startled. This tone was exactly the same as the previous Li Xiaotian's. The Li Palace disciples lowered their heads. Normally, Li Xiaotian had this kind of attitude in the Li Palace. She was the high and mighty Saintess, the chosen candidate for the next generation's palace master. Other than the palace master, everyone else had to listen to her orders, and no one had ever dared to question her actions. Tang Zheng and the others were even more surprised than the Li Palace disciples. This was because Li Xiaotian's change was too great, as if she was a completely different person. It made people wonder if she had really lost her memories. However, this thought only flashed through their minds. This was because they were certain that Li Xiaotian had really lost her memories. All of this was an act, but the act was too perfect, no different from the real thing. This was the amazing part. Lan Yu's eyes flickered as he sighed in his heart. Although Li Xiaotian had lost her memories, many of her body's intrinsic qualities had not been lost, such as this quick-wittedness. If it was anyone else, perhaps they would have already panicked and revealed their true colors. But Li Xiaotian calmed down in an instant. She could simply take the crown of Best Actress. Li Xiaotian is really too smart and cunning. Although her nature is not bad, if she occasionally has a little thought, others would not be able to detect it. They are simply not her opponent. It may not be a good thing to keep this kind of person by my son's side. Lan Yu had this preconceived idea. The more he watched Li Xiaotian's perfect performance, the more he felt it was unreliable. Li Xiaotian looked at the crowd with a fierce aura and asked, "Where is the palace master?" "The palace master has already left for some time." Li Xiaotian frowned. "Where did she go?" "Holy maiden, did the palace master leave before you left and still not return?" "Only you know where she went." Li Xiaotian was shocked. How could she remember where the palace master went? But she still did not reveal it. She nodded slightly and said, "Then I know. Holy maiden, these people are enemies. Why did you bring them to the Li Palace?" If the palace master knew, she would definitely fly into a rage. Someone cautiously glanced at Tang Zheng and the others, wanting to say something but hesitating. In the end, he could not hold back and asked. Li Xiaotian coldly smiled and mysteriously said, "This is the palace master's arrangement." If you can also comprehend the profound meaning within, then wouldn't you all become the palace master? Everyone hurriedly lowered their heads and said with fear and trepidation, "This subordinate does not dare to question the palace master's decision. Since it is the palace master's order, then we will carry it out." Tang Jing sighed in his heart. Li Xiaotian had really given him a big surprise. Turning hostility into friendship, there was no need to use swords against each other. These ordinary disciples of the Li Palace did not pose too much of a threat to him. His main enemy was Granny Li. As long as she died, the others would be scattered soldiers and disbanded like a sheet of loose sand. Seeing that he had shocked these people, Li Xiaotian's lips curled into a faint smile. He lightly nodded and ordered, "Quickly prepare a room. I want to entertain these guests." "Yes." Someone hurriedly left. Tang Zheng and the others looked at her in astonishment. They did not know why she had stayed behind. Since Granny Li was no longer in the Li Palace, then they should go find her. But in front of so many disciples of the Li Palace, they could not refute her decision. Otherwise they would definitely be exposed. Everyone looked at each other in dismay. In the end they decided to wait and see. They followed her to the center of the Li Palace. In the village with a small bridge and flowing water, there were many houses built in picturesque disorder. Along the way there were many people secretly sizing up this group of people. The Li Palace was filled with women. Besides the women who were outside collecting information, many of the women had never left the Li Palace in their entire lives. They had never seen the outside world and had never even seen a stranger. They lived every day in this palm-sized place. So after dispelling their hostility, many people were very curious about this stranger who had come for the first time. Once everyone had been properly settled and the others had been dismissed, the cold and harsh expression on Li Xiaotian's face disappeared. He smiled and said, "I'm sorry. I did not ask for everyone's opinion before making this decision." Everyone was silent. They stared at him without blinking. Li Xiaotian was somewhat alarmed. He hurriedly said, "If it's not appropriate, we will leave now." Tang Jing broke the silence and asked, "Tell us your reason. Why should we stay?" Li Xiaotian breathed a sigh of relief and confidently said, "At that time they said that the Li Palace Empress had already left and that no one knew where she went. Moreover, it seemed that only I knew. I thought that perhaps if we stayed we could track her whereabouts. This would be more advantageous to us. Otherwise, finding a needle in a haystack would be too difficult." Hearing this, everyone's eyes brightened. At that critical juncture he was able to think of so many things. His meticulousness was truly not something an ordinary person could compare to. Seeing that no one had any opinion, Li Xiaotian said, "I acted on my own accord. I hope that everyone will not take offense. In the future I will definitely discuss this matter with all of you." At this moment he was like a completely different person from before. It made people wonder if he was the same person. Chapter 948. Hearing Tang Jing say that he knew where Granny Li went, everyone looked at him curiously and urged him to speak. Tang Jing had previously learned from Li Xiaotian that Granny Li went to the northwest, but he did not know what she was going to do. However, looking at it now, she had been gone for such a long time that it was definitely not a small matter. What could be in the northwest? The desert? There was also the Tree of Life. Perhaps only the Tree of Life could attract so much of her energy. Previously, Tang Jing did not pay attention to this news, but now he realized that he had overlooked such an important piece of information. She went to the northwest desert, probably for the Tree of Life. Tang Jing said, "The Tree of Life?" Everyone was shocked. Besides Li Xiaotian, everyone had more or less heard about the Tree of Life, especially Wu Tianquanzi and Empyrean Fairy. "The Tree of Life is extremely important, we cannot afford to lose it." Tianquanzi's expression was serious. The Tree of Life was related to the destiny of this world, and even the opportunity to advance to a large world, so it could not be lost. Li Xiaotian looked at everyone blankly and asked, "What is the Tree of Life?" "It's hard to explain in a few words." Tang Jing shook his head and did not explain further. Li Xiaotian's brows flashed with a trace of disappointment, but he did not ask any more questions. "This matter should not be delayed, then we will immediately leave for the northwest desert." Tianquanzi was impatient. Tang Jing was about to nod when he heard Li Xiaotian say, "There is something I want to discuss with everyone." "What is it?" "There are so many people in the Li Palace and not all of them are bad people. Even if they do bad things, many people have no choice but to do so. Can you not kill them?" Li Xiaotian looked at Tang Jing with shining eyes and pleaded. No one expected that she would plead for mercy for the disciples of the Li Palace. They could not help but have a strange expression, as if this was too different from before. However, when he thought about how she had sacrificed herself to save a little girl whom she had never met before, it was not difficult to understand her actions. Li Xiaotian looked at Tang Jing nervously and asked, "Can I?" Along the way, she had seen them slaughter the flying guillotine of the Azure Dragon Hall and the Sword Pavilion sword slaves. Her heart was moved for a moment. There were so many girls outside and quite a few of them were still underage. They were all newcomers nurtured by the Li Palace. If she really did kill them, how could she bear to do it? Tang Jing suddenly laughed and said, "Who said I was going to kill them? I'm not a homicidal maniac." Li Xiaotian was stunned for a moment and was pleasantly surprised. "Really?" Tang Jing nodded. Of course what he said was true. Li Xiaotian immediately showed a brilliant smile, grateful. "You are really too kind. Although these people have made mistakes in the past, they do not deserve to die. I believe that they will be able to turn over a new leaf. Moreover, if you defeat the palace master, then these people will be like a group of dragons without a leader. We can still think of a way to take them in for our own use." Hearing her idea, everyone was astonished. So she actually had such a plan, one that no one else had considered. Seeing that Tang Jing was somewhat unconvinced, Li Xiaotian said, "Perhaps you don't think highly of their fighting strength, but according to what you said, the Li Palace's fighting strength has never been the Li Palace's strong point. The Li Palace's key value lies in its intelligence network." Everyone's eyes brightened. Although Li Xiaotian did not have a sufficient understanding of the overall situation, her words had pointed out the crux of the matter. This was truly commendable. Although her words were reasonable, Tang Jing did not completely agree. After all, these people had been nurtured by the Li Palace for so many years. If he wanted them to pledge allegiance to him, it would not be an easy matter. If he made a mistake, he would just be lifting a rock and smashing his own foot. Li Xiaotian was incomparably intelligent and immediately sensed Tang Jing's thoughts. She volunteered, "I can guarantee that I can take these people in and have them serve you." Her every move was unexpected and made everyone have a whole new level of respect for her. Tang Jing and the others looked at each other in dismay, as if they were pondering over the meaning of her actions. Seeing that she kept looking at him, Tang Jing did not want to disappoint her and said, "If you really have the confidence, it's not impossible to give it a try." Li Xiaotian happily nodded her head, "Don't worry, I will definitely succeed." After pausing for a moment, she continued, "It's just that there is a problem right now, and that is that I have not recovered my martial arts. For the time being, I can still suppress them, but in the long run I will definitely be exposed." "So you want to recover your martial arts as soon as possible? Can I?" Tang Jing muttered to himself for a moment, then said, "On the way here, I have already thought of a method. However, whether or not it will succeed, I am still unable to make a conclusion. However, it is still worth a try." "That's great." Li Xiaotian was so excited that she almost jumped into Tang Jing's embrace. However, seeing that Marshall had been eyeing him covetously, she finally resisted this impulse. "When do we start?" Seeing her impatient appearance, Tang Jing laughed involuntarily and said, "We won't be staying here for too long. Let's do it tonight." "All right, after dark I will secretly come here. I will not let anyone find out." Li Xiaotian's eyes lit up as she said. Li Xiaotian quickly entered, deeply afraid that others would discover him. "No one noticed anything unusual, right?" Tang Jing asked. Li Xiaotian smiled and confidently said, "Don't worry, I have made perfect preparations. Absolutely no one will notice. Moreover, no one will dare to follow me." "Good, then let's begin. You sit cross-legged on the bed." Tang Jing pointed to the bed and said. Li Xiaotian obediently sat on the bed. Tang Jing sat face to face with her. He guided her to stretch out her hands and place them against each other. He could clearly feel the temperature of her palms. Her palms were a little wet, as if she was nervous. Tang Jing comforted her. "Don't be nervous. I will guarantee your safety. Completely relax and listen to my instructions." Li Xiaotian smiled and said, "I will listen to you." This smile was very charming, causing ripples in people's hearts. Tang Jing hurriedly restrained his mind and calmed his breathing. He urged his qi to slowly spread out from his palms. It entered her palms and flowed along her meridians into her body. The method he used was to use his qi to stimulate her inner strength. From there, it would resonate and allow her martial arts to automatically circulate. Her inner strength was stored in her body and was very calm. She had no way to mobilize it unless it was at a critical moment. For example, last time when she saved someone, her body was like a mountain of treasures. It was just that the treasures within were not excavated. Tang Jing wanted to be the excavator. Step by step, he would guide and stimulate her inner strength to circulate. This would cause her martial arts to gradually reveal itself. This way she would be able to regain what she had lost and master these martial arts. Li Xiaotian listened to Tang Zheng's advice. Her body relaxed as she felt a warm flow of qi from her palms. It flowed along her arms' meridians into her body. Suddenly she felt a piercing pain from her abdomen. She cried out in fear as her face twisted in pain. "Don't be afraid. I am here." Tang Zheng hurriedly comforted her. He had already felt something strange. When his qi flowed unimpeded into her dantian, he immediately felt a rebounding force attack his qi. This was the stimulation of her inner strength. It was an instinctive reaction. A martial artist's inner strength was also stored in their dantian. However, it would not be like a cultivator who cultivated a golden core. However, when the two forces fought in the body, the owner would suffer. She clenched her teeth and looked at Tang Zheng. She said, "I am fine. You can continue. Bear with it. If your inner strength has a reaction, your chances of success will be higher." Regarding her endurance, Tang Zheng was not surprised at all. Chapter 949. Tang Zheng incessantly circulated his true qi, which stimulated Li Xiaoyan's inner strength bit by bit. Her inner strength resisted, slowly flowing along her meridians in an attempt to force the true qi out. Advancing and retreating affected every part of her body, every nerve. She grimaced in pain, continuously sucking in cold air, and her entire body was covered in sweat. Boom. Suddenly her dantian was like a dam bursting. Her inner strength rushed out like a flood, violently surging towards her true qi. Tang Zheng gave a knowing smile. It was not as difficult as he had imagined. Her true qi finally succeeded in stimulating her inner strength. This strand of true qi was too thin, it was not a match for the surging inner strength, so Tang Zheng controlled his true qi and quickly withdrew. Immediately the inner strength began to circulate on its own, circulating a small cycle in her body, and then slowly settling in her 8 extraordinary meridians. The pain on her face completely disappeared, replaced by an incomparably comfortable feeling. In addition, she felt that her entire body was filled with strength, as if she could kill a cow with a single punch. 4 eyes met, her bright eyes were filled with Tang Zheng. She couldn't help but say, "I feel like I'm filled with strength." "Then get off the bed and try," Tang Zheng encouraged. Li Xiaotian somersaulted in the air, jumping from the bed to the ground. She punched out, creating a burst of sound. Her legs swept out, creating a strong wind that swept across the chair leg, breaking it. Only then did she restrain herself, pleasantly surprised as she looked at her own hands and feet, as if she didn't recognize herself. At the same time, the martial arts returned to her mind like a tide. Each move, each set of techniques was incomparably clear, as if they were deeply engraved in her mind. "How is it?" Tang Zheng asked with a smile. "My martial arts have safely recovered. I feel very powerful, as if I'm number 1 in the world." Tang Zheng couldn't help but laugh. Number 1 in the world is still far away, but it's enough to deal with the disciples of Li Palace. "That's good, Tang Zheng, thank you." Her eyes lit up as she looked at Tang Zheng. The corners of her mouth curled up slightly. She was full of charm. Tang Zheng's head moved. He seemed to feel that her every move was much more charming than before. In the dead of night, there seemed to be some complicated emotions brewing between the two of them. Suddenly, a fragrant wind blew in his face, and Tang Zheng felt that there was another person in his arms. She was sweating profusely and her clothes were already drenched. Her thin clothes seemed as if she wasn't wearing them at all, and they clung tightly to Tang Zheng's body. Their elasticity was quite great, causing ripples in one's heart. Tang Zheng suddenly remembered that she was someone who had practiced the art of seduction. Before she had practiced martial arts, she had also restrained her art of seduction. Now that she had recovered her martial arts, her charm technique was naturally revealed, which was why he felt that her charm had increased by a lot. With such a soft jade in his arms, Tang Zheng couldn't help but feel restless. However, he still firmly pushed her out of his arms without leaving a trace. He said, "This is what I should do." Li Xiaotian didn't show the slightest difference. She faintly smiled and said, "Since I have already recovered my martial arts, I don't plan on going to the Northwest Desert with you. I want to take advantage of this time to reorganize the Li Palace and take them under your command." "So anxious?" Tang Zheng was surprised. Li Xiaotian nodded. "This kind of matter shouldn't be delayed. Will you be fine by yourself?" Li Xiaotian was full of confidence. "My conclusion is that I have a lot of prestige in the Li Palace. In addition, my martial arts have also completely recovered. The others are not my opponent. Even if there are some people who find the slightest clue and want to resist, as long as I rope in the majority of people, these people will be like small raindrops falling into the ocean, unable to make a big wave. Alright, since it's like this, then we will leave tomorrow. You be careful, go back and rest first. Seeing that he had ordered him to leave, Li Xiaotian did not stay any longer and left. Dong dong. Another series of knocks sounded. Tang Jing was confused. Could it be that Li Xiaotian had returned? Was there something else? Crick. He opened the door and saw Wuxia standing at the door, staring at him resentfully. Why are you here? Do you think I've disturbed the two of you? Marshall's jealousy was not small. Tang Jing laughed involuntarily. What's the matter? I only helped her successfully recover her martial arts. Nothing happened. Humph, if something really happened, I wouldn't be standing here talking to you. Then what will you do? Tang Jing asked curiously. Marshall thought for a moment. I will go find Li Xiaotian to settle the score. Since she dared to seduce you, I will not let her go. Seeing her jealous look, Tang Jing couldn't help but laugh. No one is seducing me. I only see you now. I won't seduce you. Is that so? But why does my soul fly away when I see you? Tang Jing said with a mischievous smile. He pulled her into his embrace and closed the door. Without giving her any chance to refuse, he directly sealed her mouth. She struggled for a moment, then completely fell into his fiery passion. During the day, the two of them had been rubbing their heads together, kissing and kissing each other. At this moment, in the dead of night, a single man and a single woman were in the same room. Everything that happened next was a matter of course. The next day, the sun rose high in the sky, and the sunlight shone in through the gap in the window, shining on the two naked people on the bed. Their arms and legs were intertwined, and they were bathed in the mottled sunlight, which added a bit of temptation. The two of them opened their eyes in a daze and looked at each other. The corners of their mouths revealed a knowing smile at the same time. Marshall lightly punched his chest and said coquettishly, "Last night, you were the one who refused to let me go. If I go out now, others will definitely see me. How do you want me to face others?" When Tang Jing's hands started to become unruly, Marshall was too lazy to resist and allowed him to do whatever he wanted. Last night, she had almost turned into a pile of mud. In the end, she was at his mercy and unlocked several embarrassing postures. In any case, they all know about our relationship, and it's not like it's something shameful, so there's no need to hide from them. Moreover, your master and mistress should really want to see us together. Tang Jing advised. Humph, do you think everyone's face is as thick as yours? Marshall rolled his eyes and said with a flash of inspiration. Fine, it's good to let them see so that some people don't have any ideas about you. The two of them were well aware of who these people were referring to. Tang Jing shook his head and smiled bitterly, saying, I really don't have the slightest relationship with Li Xiaotian, so don't be jealous. Otherwise, I wouldn't mind doing some morning exercise this early in the morning. Seeing the evil smile on his face, Marshall hurriedly begged for mercy. The two of them put on their clothes and went out together. The others had long since woken up and looked at the two of them, smiling meaningfully. Marshall wished she could find a hole to hide in. Even if she was facing a fierce enemy, she would not be so timid. She really wanted to hide behind Tang Jing, but was held tightly by Tang Jing, so she could not hide at all. She glared fiercely at Tang Jing, but he turned a blind eye to it, making her so angry that she clenched her teeth. He directly led Marshall to the few of them and greeted them with a normal expression. Everyone woke up quite early. Tian Chanzi pointed to the sun in the sky and said, Is it still early? The sun is already shining on our buttocks. I think some people were too tired last night so they couldn't get up. Tang Jing said seriously, I've been running to so many places in the past few days. I've been fighting continuously. It's indeed very tiring. Seeing him speak nonsense in such a serious manner, Tian Chanzi was defeated and gave him a thumbs up, saying that he was strong. Empyrean Fairy did not participate in the two's banter and directly asked, What was the result of last night? Success. Tang Jing's smile disappeared as he said seriously. Lan Yu's face stiffened. She did not think that they would actually succeed. Not only was Li Xiaotian intelligent and resourceful, but she also had a high level of martial arts. She was like a tiger that had grown wings. If she really had any thoughts about Tang Jing, then it would be even harder to guard against her. She frowned and looked at Tang Jing with worry, as if he would be snatched away at any moment. Empyrean Fairy was not surprised because this was in line with her predictions. She said, Then there is no need for us to stay here. Wu Junshan also nodded. Yes, in order to avoid any problems, we should immediately leave. Tang Jing nodded. I've already discussed it with her. We will leave today and she will stay. What, she will stay? The others were shocked. What will she stay for? She wants to strike while the iron is hot and take over this place. She wants to take over these people and use them for herself. Tang Jing revealed Li Xiaoyan's plan. Lan Yu muttered, her ambition is not small to be so impatient. Madame Wu is too kind. Time waits for no one, so of course I have to hurry. I hope that when you return in triumph, everything here will be under control. At that time, you will be able to add a new force to Tang Jing's strength. Wouldn't that be wonderful? Li Xiaotian heard Lan Yu's words and walked over from afar. Are you really that confident? Lan Yu asked skeptically. Li Xiaotian smiled faintly. When you return in triumph, won't everything be clear? Sensing that there was a bit of gunpowder between the two, Tang Jing hurriedly interjected. Since she is so confident, then we will do as she says. However, staying here is also very dangerous, so you should be careful. Li Xiaotian smiled charmingly, not forgetting to remind him with concern. You should be the one to be careful. We don't know what dangers there will be. Tang Jing hurriedly looked away and did not meet her gaze. He calmly said, then we will leave first. If the others ask, do you have a way to deal with them? Don't worry, I will handle everything. This matter should not be delayed, then we will leave immediately. Tang Jing decided. He did not eat breakfast and directly prepared to leave. Sure enough, before they had even walked a short distance, someone jumped out and stopped them. Holy Maiden, why did these people come and then leave? Li Xiaoyan's face was as cold as frost. She coldly stared at the other person and said, this is a secret of the Li Palace. Do I have to report to you what the palace master ordered? Her cold eyes stared straight at the other person. The other person was the one who had questioned Li Xiaotian yesterday. Chapter 950. This woman was called Ying Yu and was also Granny Li's personal disciple. Li Xiaotian coldly looked at Ying Yu and asked, you stopped them. What do you want? Ying Yu's charm was only slightly inferior to Li Xiaotian's, but she was still publicly acknowledged as a great beauty. She raised her head to Li Xiaotian and said, you've changed a lot since your return, as if you've become a different person. I have reason to suspect that you've already betrayed the Li Palace. Her insight was unique, hitting the nail on the head. When the others heard this, they began to whisper to each other. Li Xiaotian did not panic in the slightest, nor did he become angry. On the contrary, his lips curled into a sneer. Although she had never known Ying Yu before, after yesterday's inquiries she had gained a general understanding of the Li Palace without leaving a trace. She had the most thorough understanding of Ying Yu because she had long ago predicted that she would make a move, but she had not expected it to be so soon. Ying Yu, don't you find this accusation laughable? I am the holy maiden of the Li Palace, so how could I betray the Li Palace? Li Xiaotian retorted. Although Ying Yu also felt that her suspicion was somewhat absurd, this was her intuition and she had to speak it out. The human heart is unfathomable. Even if you're the holy maiden, it's not impossible for you to betray. Ying Yu refused to let go. Haha, laughable. I see that you're the one who's betrayed the Li Palace, betrayed the palace master, and that's why you're trying to drive a wedge between us. Li Xiaotian struck later, but his words were aimed directly at Ying Yu's weak point. The others all looked at her. After all, no one else had jumped out while she had blindly jumped out to accuse Ying Yu. This was enough to make her credibility drop a few notches. Li Xiaotian very cleverly used this point to his advantage, so many of the spectators began to tilt the scales in their hearts. Ying Yu thought to herself that this was bad. The holy maiden was resourceful and had a sharp tongue. Not only could she not gain any advantage with her words, she could also easily be dragged into a ditch. She hurriedly retorted, I am loyal and devoted to the Li Palace and the palace master. I have no disloyalty. You're the one who is venomously slandering me. Li Xiaoyan's eyes grew cold. Since you have no disloyalty, why are you questioning the palace master's decision? Scram. Li Xiaotian berated. Ying Yu's face flushed red. Suddenly he raised his head and said, I won't move. These people are enemies and you lured them here but you didn't do anything. I can't just turn a blind eye to this. They must stay and wait for the palace master to return. Then everything will come to light. Then can you take responsibility for delaying the palace master's important matters? Li Xiaotian pressed. A trace of panic flashed through Ying Yu's eyes before she quickly regained her composure and said, I will bear all the consequences. If palace master punishes me, I will not complain. She was making a bet this time because she really thought that everything was too strange, so she chose to follow her heart. Li Xiaoyan's eyes flashed with a trace of surprise. This person's determination was beyond his expectations. Facing such a strong pressure, she did not shrink back at all. Do you think you can just say that you'll bear the consequences? How much weight can your shoulders bear? Li Xiaotian asked jokingly. Yingyu's face was red. In fact, she felt a bit guilty. In any case, I can't let them go. I am the Holy Maiden. Since the palace master is not here, you must listen to me. Do you want to go against your superiors? I don't. If you don't, then move. No. The others couldn't stand it anymore. They knew that Li Xiaoyan's anger was about to erupt. They quickly pulled Yingyu to persuade her. However, Yingyu was like a stubborn bull. Because this time she had offended Li Xiaotian, she decided to stake it all on one throw. Holy Maiden, if you have the guts, then let them stay and wait for the palace master to return. What qualifications do you have to negotiate with me? Li Xiaotian stepped forward and glared at Yingyu. Yingyu's martial arts were not as good as Li Xiaotian's. Being suppressed by her aura, her heart raced, but she did not retreat. If you want to let them go, then you have to step over my body. Is that so? Li Xiaotian smiled faintly. Yingyu panicked. She suddenly had a bad premonition. Sure enough, Li Xiaotian glanced at the other disciples of the Li Palace and scolded, "What are you standing there for? Disobeying the Holy Maiden's orders, have you forgotten the punishment?" They were shocked as if they were facing a great enemy. They replied with a yes, and then surrounded Yingyu. "What are you doing? Yingyu, you disobeyed the Holy Maiden's orders and went against your superiors. This is a betrayal of the Li Palace. Hurry up and surrender, otherwise we won't care about our friendship," they loudly said. When the other people that Yingyu had secretly tried to win over saw this scene, they all chose to remain silent, not daring to help her. It was just that the Holy Maiden's reputation and prestige were too great, so they had no choice but to shrink back. When Tang Zheng and the others saw this scene, they couldn't help but look at Li Xiaotian in a new light. Although she had lost her memories, her methods were not bad at all. She had actually taken the initiative so quickly and made an example out of them. With Yingyu as a precedent, even if the others had any ideas, they would be quickly snuffed out. At this time, Tang Jing somewhat believed in Li Xiaotian's plan. Lan Yu's eyebrows furrowed even tighter. Yingyu looked around at the crowd that was glaring at her like a tiger watching its prey. She flew into a rage. "Li Xiaotian, you're distorting the truth, I'll fight you to the death." So, her martial arts were much higher than the average disciple of the Li Palace, so before the others could react, she leapt into the air, flying over their heads and pouncing towards Li Xiaotian. Li Xiaotian stood in her original position, not retreating a single step. Suddenly, she stretched out a hand and pointed at Yingyu's chest. In a moment of desperation, Yingyu's door was wide open, and there were too many flaws to be found. Li Xiaotian didn't waste any effort and quickly attacked her weak spot, defeating the enemy in one move, valiant and formidable. Yingyu staggered backwards, falling to the ground in a sorry state. The other Li Palace disciples hurriedly surrounded her and captured her. "Li Xiaotian, I'm not done with you," Yingyu roared with a heart-wrenching voice. Li Xiaotian didn't even look at her, directly walking in front of Tang Zheng and the others. She couldn't help but say, "You guys leave first. Then this matter." Tang Zheng glanced at Yingyu, whose eyes seemed like they were about to spit fire. Li Xiaotian faintly smiled, brimming with confidence. "I can handle it, don't worry." Tang Zheng was infected by her smile, nodding his head in understanding. "Then you have to be careful, goodbye." After he finished speaking, he walked out of the valley with the others. The others looked back at Li Xiaotian from time to time, seeing that she had already walked in front of Yingyu. No one knew what she was talking about. When they had completely left the valley, Lan Yu curiously asked, "How do you think Li Xiaotian will deal with that person? Li Xiaotian won't kill her, right?" Marshall was also very curious. Everyone looked at Tang Zheng, clearly wanting to hear his answer. He muttered to himself for a long time before saying, "I think Li Xiaotian won't kill anyone, she is a kind person at the bottom of her heart. It's just a person, what's the difference between killing and not killing?" Tian Chanzi shrugged, not finding it strange at all. If she kills, then it means that she is no different from the previously Palace Holy Maiden, and in the future she will also become our enemy. Lan Yu said worriedly. Marshall's heart tightened as he subconsciously looked at Tang Zheng. Tang Zheng did not say a word as he continued to walk forward. Empyrean Fairy suddenly broke the silence and said, "No matter what kind of thoughts she has, Tang Zheng has already left her far behind. so she won't be able to cause any big waves. These words hit the nail on the head. No matter how powerful Li Xiaotian was, she still could not be compared to Tang Jing. Even if the worst result was that she recovered her memories, she would not become enemies with Tang Jing. Because she was a smart person, this kind of person was the best at judging the situation. In the past, she had no choice but to become enemies with Tang Jing. Now that she had a choice, why would she choose such a bumpy road? This was not Li Xiaotian's style. Tang Jing did not think so much. Other than his trust in Li Xiaotian, he had more confidence in the soul-searching technique. How could the memory loss caused by the soul-searching technique be so easy to remove? So he was not worried about Li Xiaotian recovering her memories. In short, the group left the Li Palace and set foot on the road to the northwest desert. Everyone retracted their thoughts, but when they thought about how Grandma Li had been in the northwest desert for so long, they felt a little uncertain. What kind of problem had caused her to pay so much attention to it? The desert was like a painting that slowly unfolded in front of everyone. Walking in the hot desert, if it was an ordinary person, they would have already been unable to hold on, but for them, this was just a piece of cake. Heat waves hit their faces and yellow sand filled the sky, but traces of spiritual energy were transmitted from the heat waves. Tang Jing, Tian Chanzi, and Empyrean Fairy were the most sensitive to spiritual energy, so they immediately discovered this point. They looked at each other and saw the surprise in each other's eyes. Logically speaking, it was impossible for such an environment to have such abundant spiritual energy, so the only possibility was the Tree of Life. Tang Jing had walked through this area before, but at that time, there was no spiritual energy. It seemed that the Tree of Life had greatly transformed the environment of this world, so much so that even this almost barren desert was full of spiritual energy. The three of them could not help but feel happy. The more spiritual energy there was in the world, the more advantageous it was for cultivators like them. The other three were martial artists, so they were not so sensitive to spiritual energy. Seeing their reaction, they asked curiously. Tang Jing gave a simple introduction, and the corners of their mouths showed a bitter smile. If cultivators were strong, then it would be difficult to maintain the status of martial artists. However, when they saw Tang Jing, this idea was thrown to the back of their minds. As long as it was something beneficial to him, what did it matter if they suffered a little loss? Chapter 951. Hearing the Empyrean Fairy's words, everyone's attention was attracted. Especially Lan Yu, who could not wait to ask, "Is what you said true?" The Empyrean Fairy nodded gently. Lan Yu's eyes gradually lit up. It was naturally a happy thing to be recognized as a warrior. Tang Jing was also secretly surprised. In the past, he had always thought that warriors could not compare to cultivators because that was the reality. However, it seemed that he had also fallen into a misconception. Perhaps it was because of historical reasons that determined this wrong view, because cultivators had always been suppressing martial artists. If New Era had known this principle back then, he probably wouldn't have schemed to expel cultivators. Tang Jing had too many warriors around him. Since warriors had unlimited potential, it was naturally good news for him. The transformation of the world's spiritual energy does not have too serious an impact on warriors, so there's no need to worry, the Empyrean Fairy added. Everyone nodded happily. They continued to move forward. From afar they saw the Tree of Life. The huge branches and green leaves covered the sky, as if a huge green umbrella stood between heaven and earth. Before everyone could exclaim in surprise, their eyes widened. That was because they had seen something out of the ordinary. The originally clear sky above the Tree of Life underwent a huge change. A faintly discernible black vortex actually appeared. What's going on? Tian Chanzi turned pale with fright. Tang Jing was also stunned. This was a situation that had never happened before. It exuded an unusual and strange aura. The Empyrean Fairy's expression was solemn. She hesitated for a moment and said, "This seems to be connected to another world." Tang Jing's head moved. The Tree of Life was absorbing the energy of the world of spirits and souls, so it was naturally connected to the world of spirits and souls. However, it was very secretive and was not as ostentatious as it was now. He stared at the black vortex in the sky without blinking. He suddenly had a flash of inspiration and said in surprise, "That looks like a ghost gate, but an enlarged version." An enlarged version of the ghost gate. Tian Chanzi and the Empyrean Fairy were shocked. They stared at it closely. The more they looked, the more similar it seemed. Both of them had seen the ghost gate before, so it was easy for them to come to a conclusion. The other three asked in confusion, "What's the ghost gate?" Although they were considered to be the strongest among the humans, they knew very little about these mysterious things. Tang Jing briefly introduced the Hellgate. The three of them turned pale with fright as they sucked in a breath of cold air and asked, "Then what's the problem?" The Empyrean Fairy and Tian Chanzi both looked at Tang Jing. The two of them more or less knew that Tang Jing had absorbed the energy of the ghost realm through the Tree of Life. The two of them could only sigh at their own inferiority in the face of such audacious behavior. Only a five-clawed golden dragon could come up with such a shocking method. There was only one explanation for all of this, and that was that it had something to do with Tang Jing's actions. Tang Jing racked his brains. I used the 6 directions 8 wastelands formation to protect the Tree of Life and followed the instructions of the five-clawed golden dragon. Only then could I absorb the source energy of the ghost realm without anyone noticing. There shouldn't be any mistakes in all of this, so why is this strange scene happening? He pondered for a long time and shook his head. I can't figure out why this is happening for the time being. Everyone's expression darkened when they heard this. Think about it carefully. If you don't figure it out, it'll be troublesome, the Empyrean Fairy encouraged. Tang Jing closed his eyes and began to search his brain like a computer. Suddenly, a flash of inspiration appeared in his mind. His eyes lit up as he slapped his forehead and said, I know. What's going on? Last time, the leader of the dragon group, Xing Feng, destroyed the Tree of Life. Later, I didn't notice it because I didn't see any big problems. Now it seems that this strange scene was caused by the damage to the Tree of Life. Tell us in detail, Tian Chanzi and the Empyrean Fairy frowned and quickly asked. Tang Jing spoke tirelessly. Xing Feng's wild ambition was as clear as day, vivid in his mind. The others were shocked and said angrily, so all of this was caused by Xing Feng. He even damaged the Tree of Life. His crime is unforgivable. He's already dead. It's useless to denounce him. Now we have to solve the urgent matter. Since this strange scene has appeared, I suspect that the Ghost Realm already knows about this. If the Ghost Realm knows that we're absorbing their source energy, I'm afraid that things will be troublesome, Tang Jing said worriedly. If the Ghost Realm knew about this, they would definitely be furious. At that time, they would not only be facing a single person, but the hostility and threat of an entire world. Moreover, it would be from a great world. Thinking of this, Tang Jing could not help but feel a headache. He hoped that he was not a jinx and was not right. The 9 Heavens Profound Maiden and Heaven Monk also knew the seriousness of this matter, and they couldn't help but feel a deep sense of worry between their brows. It's useless to think so much now. Let's go and see what's going on first. Tang Jing took a deep breath and suppressed the messy thoughts in his mind. Everyone nodded in agreement and rushed to the Tree of Life together. As they got closer and closer, the spiritual qi became denser and denser. Even Wu Junshan and the others could feel it. Their eyes showed surprise. Tang Jing took a deep breath and said, if we cultivate here, it will definitely be twice the result with half the effort. Although this place is good, it's too big of a target. It will definitely attract the attention of all parties. Tian Chanzi said worriedly. Tang Jing smiled, I'm just saying. Now that we have crystal stones, the spiritual qi is sufficient. There's no need to take such risks. Suddenly, he stopped and gestured with his hand. There's a situation. Everyone looked over. Sure enough, there were many people surrounding the Tree of Life. However, no one could get close to the Tree of Life. This was because every time they rushed to the Tree of Life, an invisible light curtain would light up in the void, bouncing them all away. However, they persevered, but it was all in vain. These people were actually familiar faces. At least, Tang Jing saw 2 familiar faces among them, Granny Li and Fair-Faced Flying Dragon. They were the ones who led a group of people to attack, but they were repeatedly thwarted and returned without success. The Universal 8 Desolation Formation is still in effect. Tang Jing was delighted. This group of people must have been attracted by the vortex in the sky. They've been here for so long, who knows what progress they've made. Tian Chanzi said. They might have also sensed the danger. Empyrean Fairy said. Wu Junshan suddenly interjected, I know Granny Li's personality very well. She doesn't get up early without benefits. If there weren't any benefits, she definitely wouldn't have come here. I'm afraid they've also realized the importance of the Tree of Life, so they want to take it for themselves. Tang Jing thought for a moment and said non-committally, in the past, the Tree of Life had always been under the Dragon Group's control. Others simply couldn't interfere or get a share of it. Once the Dragon Group was eliminated, the government's control over the Tree of Life instantly weakened, which gave Granny Li the opportunity to take advantage of it. No matter what their goal is, we can't let them succeed. Since the Tree of Life is so important, it should be in our hands. Empyrean Fairy said without hesitation. The others also nodded. Tang Jing ignored the Tree of Life. The most important thing was that the Tree of Life was too mysterious. In a short time he couldn't study it clearly. Moreover, he used the universal 8 Desolation formation to protect it, so others couldn't get close. As they spoke, the group approached the Tree of Life. However, they swaggered around without any scruples, which immediately attracted the other party's attention. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. A few sounds of breaking air came from afar. In the blink of an eye, a few people blocked their path and shouted, "Stop, who are you?" This shout immediately attracted everyone's attention. Granny Lee and Fair-Faced Flying Dragon looked at each other, unable to hide their surprise and vigilance. They seemed to be isolated from the world here. They didn't know what was happening outside, let alone that they would be found. Therefore they were very surprised by the arrival of this group of people. The two separated from the crowd and walked to the front, vigilantly looking at the group. Granny Lee was the first to speak. "I really didn't expect to meet you here. Wu Junshan Lanyu, haven't you been hiding like cowards all this time? Why are you finally willing to show yourself?" Wu Junshan coldly snorted, "Granny Lee, that day in the martial sect, you joined hands with several elders to force me to abdicate. I haven't forgotten this matter at all. I must properly settle this debt with you." Regarding this matter, Wu Junshan couldn't let it go. Granny Lee said with a smile, "Wu Junshan, you didn't listen to the High Lord's orders. Moreover, you betrayed the old sect master back then, leaving behind Tang Jing, the root of the problem. Therefore you only have yourself to blame for all of this." Lan Yu was furious. "My son is not the root of the problem. You people who tried to harm him are the root of the problem. I failed to protect my son back then. Now even if I give up my life, I won't let anyone hurt him." Lan Yu's words were powerful and resonant, vividly displaying a mother's protective feelings for her son. Tang Jing's head warmed as he looked at her deeply, his eyes filled with tenderness. Lan Yu didn't notice as she stared straight at Granny Lee. Granny Lee sneered mockingly, declining to comment. "Granny Lee, Fair-Faced Flying Dragon, what are you doing here with so many people?" Tang Jing changed the topic. "Why should I tell you?" Granny Lee retorted. "It doesn't matter if you don't answer. In any case, you didn't succeed in your goal, right?" Tang Jing smiled. Granny Lee and Fair-Faced Flying Dragon's expressions changed slightly, but quickly returned to normal. Could it be that they knew the purpose of this trip? This time, they had indeed lost control of the Tree of Life due to the destruction of the Dragon Group. In addition, an unknown phenomenon had appeared above the Tree of Life. That was why the High Lord had sent them here to investigate and do everything possible to take the Tree of Life for themselves. Seeing their reaction, Tang Jing's head moved. It seemed that his prediction was not far from the truth. This group of people really did come for the Tree of Life. Immediately, the vigilance in Tang Jing's heart became even stronger. Chapter 952. Although Granny Lee and Fair-Faced Flying Dragon didn't show the slightest sign of weakness on the surface, they were actually feeling a little weak in their hearts. This was because the other party's lineup was truly too luxurious. Moreover, the other party had already guessed their purpose, so they were even more uncertain about what the other party would do. Tang Jing didn't put these people in his eyes and instead looked up at the sky. The black vortex made him unconsciously frown as he lightly said, "I'll go take a look." Saying so, he walked towards the Tree of Life. Granny Lee shouted, "Stop!" and suddenly jumped in front of him, glaring like a tiger watching its prey as she said, "Do you want to be the first to reach it?" Tang Jing chuckled and jokingly said, "You've been here for so long, have you made any progress? Can you break through this 6 directions 8 desolation formation?" 6 directions 8 desolation formation? Granny Lee and Fair-Faced Flying Dragon glanced at each other. This was the first time they had heard of this formation, but they had already deeply experienced its power. Granny Lee was also quite knowledgeable about formations, but she was completely clueless about the 6 directions 8 desolation formation. Seeing the two speechless, Tang Jing laughed and said, "How could the formation I laid down be so easy to break?" Granny Lee's expression slightly changed. The appearance of this formation was very strange. She didn't know that it was the work of Tang Jing. Hearing this, she looked at Tang Jing with a complicated gaze. "Why did you lay down this formation?" "Of course it's to guard against people like you who have bad intentions." "Humph, this Tree of Life isn't yours, what qualifications do you have to say such things?" Granny Lee questioned. Tang Jing laughed and said, "Although the Tree of Life isn't mine, it was only able to grow because of me. Of course, other people don't have the qualifications to take it for themselves." Originally, when he fell into the large hole under the Dragon Group's base, He accidentally encountered the tree of life and caused it to sprout and take root, resulting in this towering tree. Granny Lee didn't know the details, so she naturally didn't believe him and retorted, "Do you think we'll believe you just because of your mouth? I don't expect you to believe me. Oh, there's something you don't know I forgot to tell you." "What is it?" Tang Jing looked at them playfully and said, "The Azure Dragon Hall has already been destroyed by us. Your High Lord fled in a sorry state like a stray dog." "What did you say?" As soon as he said this, everyone on the other side turned pale with fright. One after another they scolded, "Nonsense! Our Lord is unparalleled in this world. How can you fight against him? If you want to use this method to scare us, your method is too clumsy." Tang Jing laughed out loud as he listened to their rebuttal. "What are you laughing at? Could it be that you've been exposed by us so you're trying to cover it up? He must be hiding something because of his guilty conscience." Tang Jing shook his head and said, "You guys are really deceiving yourselves. Do I need to scare you? Do you think you're a match for us? He thought too highly of himself. Let me tell you, not only did your exalts escape, Elder Angler of the Two Reverends is already dead. As for Xianyin, I have already captured her alive." "What?" Fair-faced flying dragon screamed. Previously he was still able to maintain his calm and question Tang Jing's words, but as soon as he heard Xianyin's name, his expression changed. It was like the sky during the dog days of June, dark and gloomy mixed with panic. The others, including Granny Lee, had never heard of the name Xianyin, but Fair-Faced Flying Dragon had occasionally heard the High Lord mention it. This was the biggest secret of the Azure Dragon Hall, and it was impossible for outsiders to know about it. But Tang Jing said it so casually, so everything went without saying. His words were most likely true. But according to the High Lord, the Third Reverend, Xianyin, was an extremely powerful expert. Even the High Lord felt inferior, so how could she be captured alive? Fair-Faced Flying Dragon was puzzled as he looked at Tang Jing with burning eyes. From Fair-Faced Flying Dragon's reaction, Tang Jing had already guessed a bit. He smiled meaningfully, "It seems that you know more than Granny Lee." Granny Lee also noticed the clues and suspiciously looked at Fair-Faced Flying Dragon. She was very clear that Fair-Faced Flying Dragon knew more about the Azure Dragon Hall, so she quickly asked, "What is going on?" Fair-Faced Flying Dragon's face turned from black to white. He moved his lips, but no words came out. But this reaction was enough to explain the problem. Granny Lee's face also became incomparably pale. Could it be that what he said is true? This is only about the Azure Dragon Hall. "Granny Lee, I also have some big news about the Lee Palace. Do you want to hear it?" Tang Jing asked with a smile. "What did you do to the Lee Palace?" "The Lee Palace has already changed hands." You think that the disciples of the Lee Palace will submit to you?" "Wishful thinking. Moreover, it is impossible for you to know the location of the Lee Palace," Granny Lee said with disdain. Tang Jing shook his head. "I won't tell you the details. I just want to let you know." He didn't want to bring up Li Xiaotian, so he didn't say anything else. But these words were like a heavy bomb thrown into the crowd, setting off stormy waves in their hearts. Not only did Fair-Faced Flying Dragon and Granny Lee's faces change, but the others were also at a loss for words. Tang Jing faintly smiled. This move was enough to break the majority of their will, so the following matter would be much easier to handle. "If you surrender except for the leader, I can let the rest of you live. After this village there won't be another opportunity," Tang Jing advised. "Don't believe him." Fair-Faced Flying Dragon suddenly shouted, "We will live and die together. We can definitely defeat them." Granny Lee's eyes flickered, but she didn't forget to shout, "Right everyone, let's fight to the death." Tang Jing shook his head. "I gave you a chance to live, but you chose to seek your own deaths. You can't blame me for this." Wu Junshan and the rest were already ready to make a move. Hearing Tang Jing's order, all of them rushed towards the enemy. Wu Junshan firmly locked onto Granny Lee. His figure flashed in front of her and he launched a fierce attack on her. Seeing this, Granny Lee shouted, "Wu Junshan, I didn't kill you that day. Today you will die without a doubt." Whoosh! She waved the crutch in her hand and a strong wind swept toward Wu Junshan. Wu Junshan drew circles with his hands, and the continuous power of yin-yang harmony gushed out from the circles. The crutch was pushed aside and the attack missed. However, Granny Lee's wrist shook, and the attack of the crutch suddenly changed. It drew a shadow and hit Wu Junshan's head. This change of move was so fast and strange that it was completely unexpected. After all, she was a first-grade martial king, one level higher than Wu Junshan's 9th-grade supreme power realm, so she was more skillful. Seeing this, Wu Junshan's hair stood on end. He was shocked. He lowered his body and raised his hands, drawing 9 circles at once. This was the highest level of yin-yang harmony. He had mastered it, and in an instant the explosive power increased exponentially. Bang! He caught the crutch with his bare hands. The huge force made the bones in his arms creak. Yin-yang harmony was best at using softness to overcome the strong, so he was not overwhelmed by the power of the crutch. Wu Junshan's face flushed red. He gritted his teeth and returned to normal. He turned his palms and slapped toward Granny Li's head. Granny Li snorted disdainfully. She swept her crutch, and a shadow of the crutch appeared in front of Wu Junshan. It was extremely dangerous. "I'll also fight you, Granny Li." Lan Yu's voice came, and a graceful figure appeared in front of Granny Li in a flash. She pointed a finger, and a brilliant power burst out from her fingertip. Lan Yu had once pointed a finger at a mecha, but that mecha could not withstand the power of her finger. One could imagine how terrifying the power of her finger was. Granny Li knew how powerful Lan Yu was, so she shouted, "Lan Yu, your yang-breaking finger is fierce and overbearing, but it will be very difficult for you to defeat me." Lan Yu was unmoved and said coldly, "I can't defeat you alone, but we are husband and wife and we can cut through metal." As soon as she finished speaking, she pointed a finger at the shadow of the crutch. A terrifying power tore through the shadow of the crutch, and with a poof the shadow was broken. However, the power of this finger was not used up and it pointed at the crutch. Bang! The power of this finger was so terrifying that the crutch trembled, and Granny Li flew back a few steps before she could stabilize herself. Granny Li's face turned ugly and she said, "You really live up to your reputation. One finger can break yin and yang, and it's even more powerful than Wu Junshan's yin-yang harmony." Lan Yu snorted and said, "You were also involved in almost killing my son. Today we will settle this once and for all." Lan Yu was like a maddened lioness. With a low roar, she charged forward again. Wu Junshan was not idle either. The two were husband and wife, and many times their thoughts were connected. They could understand each other's thoughts with just a faint look, and they cooperated well. The power of the two's combined attacks was greatly increased. This was not just the superposition of their individual strengths, but also more than the sum of their strengths. Thus, Granny Li's eyes flashed with surprise, and she no longer dared to underestimate them. "Then I will send you husband and wife on your way today." Granny Li was full of confidence and launched a storm of attacks. The husband and wife were not afraid at all and counterattacked. Fair-faced Flying Dragon knew how powerful the Empyrean Fairy was, so when he learned of the situation in the Azure Dragon Hall, although he appeared calm on the surface, he was already feeling scared. Seeing the others attack, he dodged, trying to avoid a head-on confrontation with the Empyrean Fairy. Just as he dodged the Fairy of the Nine Heavens, he saw a long sword that was shining with cold light coming towards him. He was shocked and leaped back in the air, but he didn't manage to dodge the sword completely. There was a wound on his body and blood flowed out. He had just started and he was already injured, which made him feel embarrassed and scared. Looking carefully, he realized that the one who attacked him was Tian Chanzi. Although he was also a martial king, he knew that there was a big gap between him and Tian Chanzi. Now, with a pincer attack, he had nowhere to run. With a roar, he slashed out with his sword. The Taya sword. The Empyrean Fairy's eyes turned cold and said, "It is a waste for the first Emperor Qin's Taya sword to fall into your hands. Last time you escaped, but this time don't even think about escaping." She was very familiar with the Taya sword and knew how powerful it was. It was a waste for Fair-Faced Flying Dragon to have such a divine tool. Chapter 953. Fair-Faced Flying Dragon's face turned serious as he watched the two masters attacking him from the front and back. With a flick of his wrist, sword flowers bloomed in the air. Preemptive strike. He decided to use Tian Chanzi as a breakthrough point. Obviously, Tian Chanzi was slightly inferior to the Empyrean Fairy. Tian Chanzi saw the dazzling sword light piercing towards him, and the sword in his hand moved. His sword was a heaven-grade magic treasure and could not be compared to the Taya sword, but he had the advantage of having more profound skills. Thus, in the midst of the sword light, there were sounds of clashing and sparks flying in all directions. Tian Chanzi's otherworldly flying fairy was complex and ever-changing. It could be graceful or heavy, but it could be mastered and its power was peerless. Fair-Faced Flying Dragon's sword moves were particular about the word strange. Strange moves came out one after another to resolve the most dangerous situation, which was unexpected. The two sword moves were exquisite and peerless. In the blink of an eye they had exchanged more than 10 moves. Tian Chanzi became more and more courageous. while fair-faced flying dragon was retreating as he fought. He felt a huge pressure. He gradually understood that although he did not underestimate his opponent, he still underestimated Tian Chanzi. He was also a sword master, but in the face of Tian Chanzi's sword moves, he could only defend. Occasionally he would counterattack, but it was easily resolved by Tian Chanzi. He knew that things were not looking good. This time he was doomed. He retreated a few more steps but heard a gust of wind behind him. He subconsciously turned back, but the Taya sword had already stabbed back. The Taya sword stabbed into the air, and a palm imprinted on his body. Bang! A huge force burst out and he flew backwards, spitting out a mouthful of blood. Before he landed, he saw Tian Chanzi leaping into the air, the sword light in his hand blossoming and slashing towards him. Fair-faced flying dragon ignored the raging waves and immense pain in his body, and raised the Taya sword with difficulty. Clang! The Taya sword flew out of his hand. Blood spurted out from his chest as a huge sword wound appeared on his chest. Fortunately, at the critical moment he forcibly twisted his body and moved back a few inches, so the sword didn't cut him in half. But there was no doubt that he was heavily injured. He fell heavily to the ground, splashing blood all over the ground, and his eyes instantly became dispirited. Tian Chanzi reacted quickly and caught up with Tai Jian in a flash. A look of joy appeared on his face. The Empyrean fairy glanced at him indifferently. She didn't fight for it. She didn't use a sword, so it was useless even if she had the Taya sword. Tian Chanzi gently stroked the Taya sword as if he was caressing his beloved woman. His eyes burned with a blazing light as he muttered to himself, "The Taya sword is indeed extraordinary." Shwa. He waved the Taya sword, bringing out a biting cold sword chi. He was overjoyed and quickly cut a wound on his palm. His blood dyed the Taya sword red. At the same time he muttered some words. Although the Taya sword fell into the hands of fair-faced flying dragon, he was a martial artist and didn't know the method to bind it with blood. So, strictly speaking, he couldn't be considered the Taya sword's owner. As for its previous owner, Qin Shi Huang, he was already dead. The contract between them had long since expired, making it an ownerless item. Tian Chanzi was very clear on this point, so he couldn't wait to bind it with blood. Saint weapons were hard to come by, so he couldn't miss this opportunity. When the incantation was finished, the Taya sword immediately released a red light. It quickly converged and disappeared along with the blood. Haha, success! Tian Chanzi laughed loudly. Fair-faced flying dragon staggered to his feet, clutching his chest. He looked at this scene with a pale face and shouted, "What did you do to my Taya sword?" Tian Chanzi waved the Taya sword, bringing out an even stronger sword chi. He coldly looked at fair-faced flying dragon and said, "Who said the Taya sword was yours? You took the Taya sword from Qin Shi Huang's hands, but you only used a little of it. The essence of the Taya sword was not used at all. It was simply a waste. Now that it is with me, it can display its true power." The Taya sword also had a sword spirit. Hearing these words, it seemed to be encouraged. It buzzed and trembled as if it was praising him. Fair-faced flying dragon saw this scene and his face became even paler. Although he didn't want to admit it, it was the truth. He really didn't become the true owner of the Taya sword. Immediately, his face revealed a bleak and self-deprecating smile. At the same time, the other people's battle became more and more intense. Wu bravely advanced and began to fight with several Li Palace disciples. Her martial arts were much higher than theirs. Although she was alone, she didn't fall into a disadvantage. The Inferno Divine Palm's power was unparalleled. With a few palm strikes, she sent several people flying, causing others to shrink back. However, the addition of another group of people caused Marshall to feel great pressure. These people were all master-level warriors because they were flying guillotines. Tang Jing had already noticed this group of flying guillotines. Their attire was too special and he could recognize them at a glance. Seeing that they were attacking Marshall, how could Tang Jing just sit back and watch? The War Spirit sword directly slashed at one of the flying guillotines. With a poochie sound, the flying guillotine was torn into pieces. The War Spirit sword lightly touched another person's throat. Pooh, a small red dot appeared. That person's eyes widened and he fell to the ground dead. Tang Jing had reached the first-grade nascent soul stage, which was many levels higher than these great scholar stage martial artists. Moreover, these flying guillotines were like a sheet of loose sand, and without the command of a high lord, they were unable to display their true power. Seeing that Tang Jing was attacking, most of the flying guillotines attacked Tang Jing like a tide. If it was before, Tang Jing would definitely turn around and run. However, he was now in an invincible position. The war spirit sword shone brightly like the scythe of the Grim Reaper, reaping their lives one by one. He did not show the slightest bit of mercy to these blood guillotines, because the blood guillotines were not like the disciples of the Li Palace who were ignorant of the ways of the world. Their hands were all stained with blood, and this could be seen from the powerful killing intent they exuded. In fact, the flying guillotine's refinement required countless killings in order to accumulate such a strong murderous aura in its body. Seeing their companions fall one by one under the war spirit sword, the flying guillotines gradually revealed terrified expressions and retreated step by step. In addition, the battle between fair-faced Flying Dragon and Granny Li had weakened their momentum by more than half. Although Granny Li was a first-grade martial king, she was still forced into a corner by two people who were about to step into the threshold of martial king. The loss of her companions had seriously affected Granny Li's normal performance. She no longer had the determination to continue fighting and had been looking for an opportunity to escape. However, Wu Junshan and Lan Yu had a tacit understanding. Although their cultivation was slightly inferior, their combined attacks were very powerful. They learned from each other's strengths and made up for each other's shortcomings. Suddenly, Wu Junshan deliberately revealed an opening. Granny Li's eyes flashed. She was overjoyed and secretly said that the heavens were helping her. She attacked Wu Junshan like lightning. Wu Junshan sneered in his heart but pretended not to know. At this moment, Lan Yu took advantage of the situation and attacked Granny Li's vital points with lightning speed. Damn, it's a trap. Granny Li's heart darkened, but she did not panic. She continued to attack Wu Junshan, trying to force Lan Yu to stop. This was because if Lan Yu did not stop, Wu Junshan would definitely be injured. However, she had underestimated the tacit understanding and determination of this couple. The two looked at each other and understood what the other was thinking. Lan Yu did not stop, so she saw the determination in her husband's eyes. She was not an ordinary woman, so of course she would not act like a little girl. This was a risky move in chess. Not only did Lan Yu not stop, she moved even faster and attacked even more fiercely. The power condensed at her fingertips was terrifying. Granny Li turned pale with fright, but there was no way out. She could only wave her walking stick and hit Wu Junshan's chest. There was a muffled sound like thunder, but before she could use all her strength, her back was hit by a finger. Yang breaking finger, one finger to break yin and yang. Blood spurted out from Granny Li's back. The corner of her mouth twitched violently. She staggered and fell to the ground. Wu Junshan was on the verge of collapse. Lan Yu hurriedly supported him and asked, "How are you?" Wu Junshan's throat moved and he spat out a large mouthful of blood. He was on the verge of death. He said with difficulty, "Don't let Granny Li go." Lan Yu understood the meaning in her husband's eyes. She nodded and said, "Rest well. I'll take care of her." Whoosh. As soon as she turned around, she rushed towards Granny Li. Granny Li's injuries were not lighter than Wu Junshan's, but her cultivation was deeper, so she did not completely collapse. She wiped the blood from her mouth and fiercely pressed on her chest a few times to stop the bleeding. Her face was pale as she muttered to herself, "They didn't hesitate to hurt each other. They're crazy." She did not know how much the couple hated the accomplice who hurt their son. With their cultivation, they could not take revenge on the High Lord. Now that they met Granny Li, they would naturally seek justice at all costs. Seeing Lan Yu rushing over without any regard for her own safety, Granny Li's eyes flashed with panic. She did not care about her injuries and hurriedly retreated. "Granny Li, don't even think about escaping." Lan Yu roared. The others also saw this scene. Fair-faced Flying Dragon turned pale with fright. Not only did he watch Taya fall into Tian Chanzi's hands, but even his most powerful accomplice, Granny Li, was seriously injured and unable to protect herself. Were they going to be wiped out this time? He did not have time to think because Tian Chanzi walked towards him step by step with Taya. He hurriedly retreated and shouted, "You want to kill me?" Tian Chanzi said with a smile, "Elder Angler is already dead. Since you are also one of the Azure Dragon Hall's consecrators, you should accompany him and keep him company." Fair-faced Flying Dragon's expression kept changing. The arrogant him never thought that he would end up like this. He was unwilling and angry. He fiercely glared at Tian Chanzi and said, "Don't be happy too early. Back then, the Azure Dragon Hall's first High Lord was able to expel you cultivators from this world. Our current High Lord can do the same. Even if I die, you won't have an easy time." "Are you trying to scare me?" Tian Chanzi, am not afraid of anything. Why would I be scared by someone who is about to die? Now I'll send you on your way." Tian Chanzi roared. Taya burst out with a dazzling light. With a whoosh, it flew out of his hand. The sword flashed and pierced through fair-faced flying dragon's chest. Boom. Fair-faced flying dragon stared blankly at his chest. His eyes quickly lost their vitality and he fell to the ground. Chapter 954. Fair-faced flying dragon's life was taken away by the Taya sword. The sound of his body hitting the ground was like a clap of thunder that exploded in Granny Lee's heart. It was as if she could see her own death. She raised her walking stick and fought back with great difficulty. Lan Yu fought bravely. Boom. Suddenly there was a clap of thunder in the sky. A black bolt of lightning fell from the black vortex and struck the Tree of Life. Wah. A ray of light rose from the Tree of Life and clashed with the black lightning, exploding into a myriad of dazzling lights. This change was out of everyone's expectations. Even Granny Lee was stunned. They had been here for so long and had only seen the vortex in the sky become darker and darker. There were no other changes, let alone the black lightning. Could lightning be black? She had never heard of or seen anything like this before. The others subconsciously stopped fighting and raised their heads to look at this inconceivable scene. Tang Jing shivered and shouted, "Not good." He took the lead and rushed towards the Tree of Life. He quickly activated the Universal 8 Desolation Array and rushed into the invisible protective barrier. Empyrean Fairy and Tian Chanzi were also attracted by this scene and quickly followed. Lan Yu, Wu Junshan, and Marshall's expressions all changed. Seeing the three of them as if they were facing a great enemy, they knew that something must have gone wrong. Lan Yu was absent-minded, but Granny Lee quickly seized the opportunity. Her walking stick tapped on the ground and with the help of the huge rebound, she flew into the distance like an arrow. When Lan Yu reacted, Granny Lee had already fled far away. She hatefully stomped her foot. "I'll chase after her. Marshall, take care of your master." Wu Junshan immediately supported Wu Junshan. The rest of the defeated soldiers did not have the heart to continue fighting. Although many of them had higher cultivations than Wu Junshan, no one dared to attack the two of them. Instead, they quickly fled into the distance, not even daring to look back. Marshall did not have the energy to deal with these people. She worriedly looked at the vortex in the sky. Wu Junshan coughed and weakly said, "Let's go in as well." Marshall supported Wu Junshan as they walked step by step into the 6 Directions 8 Desolation Array. Admiring the majesty of the Tree of Life at close range, one could not help but sigh at its miraculous nature. Wu Junshan took a deep breath and felt the air enter his lungs through his trachea. The pain from his wound actually lessened slightly. He said in surprise, "This air is too magical. Perhaps this is the effect of the spiritual energy that they were talking about." That was indeed the case. The spirit chi was dense enough. Even if an ordinary person inhaled it, it would be greatly beneficial to their body. The Tree of Life continuously released spirit chi. The spirit chi here had reached an extremely high level. That was why Wu Junshan had such a feeling. Tang Zheng had already rushed to the bottom of the Tree of Life. With a tap of his toes, he climbed up the trunk and rushed to the top of the tree as if he was walking on flat ground. In the blink of an eye, he disappeared into the dense foliage. Empyrean Fairy and Tian Chanzi were a little slower, but they followed without any hesitation. Wu Junshan was injured and was unable to withstand such a jolt. He could only wait anxiously under the tree with Wu. Tang Jing brushed past the dense foliage and soared up. Suddenly, his eyes lit up as he reached the top. He soared up from the foliage and landed on the treetop. Looking up, the black vortex in the sky seemed to be within reach. Observing the vortex at close range, he immediately felt a soul-stirring yin chi being emitted from the vortex, enveloping the sky. If not for the 6 Directions 8 Desolation Array protecting the Tree of Life, this yin chi would have directly corroded the Tree of Life. It really is the ghost realm. Tang Jing muttered to himself. Boom. Suddenly, another clap of thunder exploded in the vortex. Then, another bolt of lightning descended, ruthlessly striking the invisible light barrier. Immediately, ripples of light rippled out. The ripples of light quickly spread out in all directions. Not long after, it covered the entire light barrier. The originally invisible light barrier immediately appeared. Boom. Immediately after, another black bolt of lightning, 3 black bolts of lightning descended from the sky and landed on the light barrier. Immediately, the light barrier began to tremble violently. In the end, with a kacha sound, the light barrier actually shattered into pieces, turning into specks of light that scattered in all directions. The 6 Directions 8 Desolation Array was broken. Tang Jing stared blankly at this scene. Originally, he was extremely confident in the 6 directions 8 desolation array. After all, this was an extremely powerful array, and with the activation of the Heaven and Earth Profound Stone, it should be impregnable and unbreakable. Once the 6 directions 8 desolation array was broken, Tang Jing knew that something was wrong. If the powerful black lightning landed on the Tree of Life, it would definitely harm it. His worries were immediately fulfilled. Another loud sound came from the sky, and then a thick black lightning bolt descended, directly striking towards the Tree of Life. Tang Jing roared. He stepped forward and waved the War Soul Sword in his hand, soaring into the sky like a slowly rising red sun. The sword light that erupted from the War Soul Sword completely enveloped Tang Jing, and the man and sword became one, going against the flow. Boom! The lightning fell on Tang Jing's body, and the thick lightning turned into small lightning bolts. It was like a giant python that had hatched many young snakes. They slithered around and entangled Tang Jing. His sword had indeed scattered the lightning, but it did not destroy it. Instead, it caused the lightning to turn from a whole to zero and become omnipresent. Ah! He let out a heart-wrenching cry mixed with pain because those lightning bolts were actually trying to drill into his skin. These lightning bolts all contained extremely strange power. If they were allowed to enter the body, it would definitely be harmful to the person. Therefore he activated his true chi and the holy armor shield. With a sword in one hand and a shield in the other, he resisted the strange black lightning. Pa pa pa. The electric current continued to flow through his body. Tang Jing's entire body trembled, but he still gritted his teeth and forcefully activated his true chi, as if he was trying to force the lightning back. However, these lightning bolts were extremely strange and powerful. The true chi was actually unable to force them back. They seemed to be able to break through Tang Jing's defense and invade his body. Suddenly, Tang Jing saw the whirlpool in the sky from the corner of his eyes. It seemed to be brewing lightning again. He shouted, "Crap." The lightning in front of him had not been dealt with yet, and now there was another bolt of lightning. Wasn't this trying to kill him? Boom. As expected, after a loud sound, the lightning descended. It was as if it wanted to turn him into a piece of charcoal. "If you want to kill me, I'll fight you to the death." Tang Jing roared and gave up on the holy armor shield. In any case, it would not be able to block this strange lightning. He stretched out his hand and directly grabbed at the lightning. However, he did not completely lose his mind, nor was he seeking death. Instead, he had an idea and activated the sky swallowing technique. The sky swallowing technique could devour everything. He wondered if it would work on this black lightning. A black hole appeared in his palm. His hand was like an antenna, firmly attracting the lightning's attention. All the lightning bolts struck his hand at once. The scene of Tang Jing being turned into charcoal was not what he had imagined. He was safe and sound. He raised his hand as if he was a hero who had sacrificed himself for justice. He was stunned for a moment and stared blankly at his intact hand. Joy gradually spread in the depths of his eyes. He was so surprised that he almost jumped up and cheered, "Ha, lightning, aren't you very powerful? Come on, I'm not afraid of you anymore." Seeing that the lightning on his body was still running around, Tang Jing hurriedly aimed his palm at those small lightning bolts. It was like a huge vacuum cleaner, and these lightning bolts were like dust. In the blink of an eye, they were sucked in and disappeared. He relaxed and looked up at the sky. He pointed at the black whirlpool and shouted, "Come on, I'll teach you a lesson." Empyrean Fairy and Tian Chanzi also caught up. They happened to see this scene and said, "We just heard thunder again. Are you okay? Where's the lightning?" Looking around, there was no trace of lightning. The two couldn't help but click their tongues in wonder. Tang Jing pointed at his palm and said, "I've collected all of them." "Took it?" The two were confused. "Yes, I took it with the sky swallowing technique." Tang Jing couldn't help but feel a little proud. The two of them sucked in a breath of cold air at the same time. Previously, they had seen the lightning from afar and had a rough estimate that the power of this lightning was definitely not weak. With Tang Jing's cultivation, it would be extremely difficult for him to completely block it. But now, seeing him standing in front of them in perfect condition, the two were a little confused. Were they wrong? The lightning bolts were casually taken in by the sky swallowing technique? This was too much of a fake. Tian Chanzi knew a little about the sky swallowing technique. After all, it was a technique of the demon race. But he had never heard of such a great effect. He couldn't help but secretly wonder. The two were full of doubts and looked up at the sky. Suddenly roar. A roar came from the whirlpool. Then a bolt of lightning was brewing in the whirlpool. This bolt of lightning was thicker, like a ferocious black python, hovering and swimming in the whirlpool. waiting for an opportunity to move. Someone is controlling the whirlpool. Mysterious maiden of the 9 heavens stared at the whirlpool and suddenly said to the point. It must be someone from the ghost realm. It seems that our worries have come true. They have indeed found out that the tree of life is absorbing the ghost realm's energy, so they are trying to use this lightning to deal with the tree of life. Tang Jing speculated. His speculation was right. At first, the ghost realm didn't find any clues, but invisibly the energy of the ghost realm was weakening. Then one day they found a looming whirlpool in the sky. They immediately launched an investigation. After a difficult investigation, they finally confirmed the truth. The human world was absorbing the ghost realm's energy. This discovery shocked the ghost realm, but more than that, they were angry. The human world was no longer as glorious as before. The ghost realm was even more contemptuous of the human world. Now that they found out that the human world was absorbing the ghost realm's energy, how could they not be surprised and angry? Suddenly, the ghost realm united and decided to teach the human world a profound lesson and let them know who was the master. Chapter 955. Looking at the black lightning in the sky, the Empyrean fairy asked worriedly, "Are you sure you can deal with it?" Tang Jing, don't try to be brave. This isn't a game. It's a matter of life and death. Tian Chanzi also reminded him. Tang Jing wasn't completely sure, but he was willing to give it a try. After all, he had experienced the power of the sky-devouring technique, so he chose to take a gamble. I'll give it a try. All right, we'll be by your side. If anything goes wrong, we'll take action. Tian Chanzi said with a dignified expression. The Empyrean fairy didn't say a word, but it was obvious that she had the same plan. This was undoubtedly a huge gamble. If Tang Jing's judgment was wrong, and the lightning was too powerful, Tian Chanzi and the Empyrean fairy wouldn't be able to save him in time. Then Tang Jing would be blasted into ashes by the lightning. He took a deep breath. His heart was in his throat and he looked up at the sky. Rumble. With a deafening sound, the python-like lightning fell. Tang Jing raised his hands and silently used the sky-devouring technique. Immediately, 2 black holes appeared in his palms. He kept urging his power, and the black holes in his palms grew bigger and bigger. Suddenly, the air above his hands fluctuated violently, and circles of ripples appeared. The air gradually turned black and finally turned into a huge black hole. At this moment, the lightning struck and fell into the black hole. Whoosh! The black hole flashed and the lightning disappeared. It was as if it had never appeared and there was no trace of it. Tang Jing stared blankly at this scene. Just now, he had desperately urged the sky-devouring technique. He had a feeling that the sky-devouring technique was showing signs of a breakthrough. His sky-devouring technique had been stuck at the 2nd level of absorption. Now that it showed signs of breaking through to the 3rd level of soul-devouring, how could he not be surprised? The sky-devouring technique is really extraordinary. It's amazing. Tang Jing couldn't help but praise. The Empyrean fairy and Tian Chanzi also looked at this scene in surprise. The sky-devouring technique was a little out of the ordinary, and they were completely surprised. At that moment, the 2 of them no longer dared to underestimate this set of spells. With a thought from Tang Jing, the huge black hole did not disappear. Instead, it faced the sky as if it was mocking the lightning for overestimating itself. Brr. Another angry roar came from the vortex. The color of the vortex became darker and darker, and the black clouds rolled. Suddenly, a figure appeared in the black clouds. The black cloud continued to spread downwards like a flight of stairs descending from the sky and landing on top of everyone's heads. This was a ferocious ghost head. 2 balls of ghostly fire burned in its hollow eyes. It was blue and extremely terrifying. He was very tall, at least a few meters tall. He looked down at the 3 of them with an awe-inspiring aura. What is this? Tang Jing cried out in surprise. Back then he had never seen such a behemoth in the ghost realm. You humans are so bold. How dare you absorb the original energy of our ghost realm? We will destroy your human world. The ferocious ghost opened its mouth and roared angrily like thunder. The Empyrean fairy had been looking at this behemoth coldly. After listening to his words, she retorted, "Don't make the ghost realm sound so righteous. Back then, the human world was a big world, and your ghost realm was just a small world attached to the human world. Now, your ghost realm has become a big world and the human world has become a small world. Isn't it obvious enough?" Tang Jing had never thought of this problem, but it was indeed a fact. Tian Chanzi also nodded subconsciously. The transformation of the human world and the ghost realm had happened in the past few hundred years. It was impossible to say that the ghost realm did not do anything. Tianqianzi muttered to himself and agreed, that makes sense. So all of this is what the ghost realm brought upon itself. We are just taking back what originally belonged to us. The ghost was stunned for a moment. It seemed that it did not expect that there would be people in the human world who could see so clearly. The flames in its eyes jumped up and down. Its empty eyes stared at the three of them and asked, "Who are you people? How do you know these things? If you don't want people to know, don't do it in the first place. Moreover, this is not a profound matter. You can get the answer with a little analysis." The Empyrean fairy said indifferently, "So what if you know? Now that you dare to do this, we will kill you and flatten the human world." The ghost said arrogantly. Tang Jing had been silent. When he heard this, he sneered, "Flatten the human world? What a big tone." The ghost's eyes turned and the flames in its pupils were aimed at Tang Jing. It said, "With your strength you dare to challenge our ghost realm. You really don't know life from death. Is that so? Then I'll deal with you first." Tang Jing did not have a good impression of the ghost realm. Back then he still lost a shooting sun arrow in the ghost realm. He had thought of going back to get it, but he never had the opportunity. Now that he met this rude ghost, he naturally started with it. Whoosh! The tip of his foot lightly tapped on the branch. The branch bent down and suddenly bounced back. He held War Soul and flew towards the ghost. He could not see through the ghost's real situation, so he decided to explore the path first. Whoosh! A heaven-flying immortal sword technique pierced towards the ghost. The ghost stood on the black cloud and roared. Its sharp claws like a beast slapped towards Tang Jing. The claws hit the War Soul, but there were no sparks. Only black gas splashed out from the claws and a gap appeared. Then it quickly repaired itself and returned to normal. Tang Jing's pupils constricted. He thought to himself that it could actually repair itself. This was similar to the ability of the Blood Clan. However, he did not stop there. He skillfully attacked with a few sharp sword moves. These moves were divided into top, bottom, left and right, respectively attacking different parts of the ghost. The ghost's body was huge, but its movements were very agile. Its claws were like weapons, perfectly receiving the attack of War Soul. Of course, the power of War Soul was not to be underestimated. It cut off a few of the ghost's fingers. When the fingers left his body, they immediately turned into a ball of black gas and transformed into a ferocious ghost head. It merged into his body and the fingers quickly grew out. Tang Jing was secretly shocked. What was going on? The Empyrean fairy silently watched the battle. When she saw the fingers transform into ghost head, her eyes lit up and shouted, "I finally understand. Tang Jing, this ghost is not a real body, but a condensation of countless ghosts. So, even if you cut it into 4 or 5 pieces, it can quickly reassemble and recover. Is it really like this? It's all condensed from ghosts?" Tang Jing was shocked. He stared at the ghost but did not find any clues. When the ghost heard this, the flames in its eyes jumped a few times. It was obvious that she had seen through its thoughts. It looked at the Empyrean fairy in shock. The flames in its eyes jumped, and its face was ferocious and unkind. Since the Empyrean fairy can see through it, then it must be right. It is condensed from ghosts. It will not be so easy to completely defeat it. Although he said this, Tang Jing did not retreat. Instead, he desperately urged the War Soul. Suddenly, a light flashed in his mind. The third move of the Tai Chi Yang sword technique appeared. He was overjoyed at the unexpected good news. Without even thinking, he used it in the time it takes for a spark to fly off a flint. Tens of thousands of sword light burst out from the War Soul. In an instant, the ghost was torn into pieces by the sword light, turning into pieces. However, when the sword light disappeared, the pieces immediately turned into black smoke. Then they turned into ferocious ghost heads. They fused together at a speed visible to the naked eye. Not long after, the huge ferocious ghost appeared again. The three of them witnessed this scene with their own eyes. They were amazed. This was simply an undying monster. How could they fight it? Tang Jing scratched his head. He was also very distressed. He turned to look at Tianqianzi and the Empyrean fairy. The two of them nodded in tacit understanding and said, "We will help you." With the help of 2 experts, the situation of the battle changed in an instant. This ghost's strength was indeed very strong. Moreover, it became stronger when faced with a strong opponent. It turned out that when it fought with Tang Jing, it did not use its full strength. One could only see its hand grab the void. A black lightning immediately formed in its hand. The lightning crackled and the power was extraordinary. Just now, the lightning was actually controlled by it. In an instant, its 2 hands grabbed 2 lightning bolts. These two lightning bolts were like two whips, but they were even more powerful. They constantly flashed with black lightning and sizzled. Whoosh! The ghost waved the lightning whip. Wherever the lightning whip passed, the air was like the sea. The lightning whip carried a terrifying power and lashed out at Tianqianzi and the Empyrean fairy. The two of them did not dare to be careless. They simultaneously took out their magic weapons. When Heaven Monk first obtained the Taiya sword, he was in high spirits. Activating his innate chi, he used the flying immortal sword. Shua, the Taiya sword flew out, drawing a beautiful sword light, welcoming the lightning whip. The sword light and the lightning bolt collided and burst out a dazzling light. However, no one could do anything to the other. Tianqianzi was not willing to give up. The ghost was even more unwilling. Both of them launched a second round of attacks at the same time. The Taiya sword and the lightning whip occupied more than half of the sky, leaving behind countless shadows and lights. It was earth-shattering. Rumble. It was as if the sky was falling and the earth was splitting. The ghost was multitasking. On one hand it fought Tianqianzi. On the other hand, it waved the lightning whip to attack the Empyrean fairy. The Empyrean fairy was calm. Although she knew that the opponent was strong, her heart was still as water. Step by step, she calmly received the attack. As soon as the stately painting appeared, a gust of wind blew from it, forming a small tornado. It was like a whip entangled with the lightning whip. They fought like a tug of war. The ghost did not panic at all. It also dealt with the attacks as they came. A black gas surged out of its body and entered the tornado. Suddenly the tornado turned black. A few ghost heads flashed faintly inside. Boom. With an explosion, the tornado was torn apart. The ghost heads proudly floated up, as if mocking the Empyrean fairy. The Empyrean fairy coldly snorted. "You're courting death." With a thought, a huge whirlpool appeared on the stately painting. The suction force increased, and the air was immediately sucked into the painting. Chapter 956. Several ferocious ghost heads flew towards the stately painting. However, the gigantic ghost roared and emitted clouds of black gas, which immediately engulfed the ghost heads. Immediately, the ghost heads seemed to have found their home and quickly merged with the black gas, returning to the ghost's body. Although the stately painting was very attractive, it was unable to shake this ferocious ghost. The flames in the ghost's eyes danced, as if mocking the Empyrean fairy's helplessness. The Empyrean fairy's brows trembled. "I don't believe I can't deal with you." As soon as she finished speaking, a towering mountain fell from the sky, pressing down on the ghost's body. The monster roared angrily and used its body to block the mountain. Compared to the mountain, it was much smaller. The stairs created by the black clouds under its feet cracked, and many cracks spread out. The mountain's enormous strength bent its waist. Tianqianzi acted according to the situation and slashed out with the Taiya sword, directly piercing a large hole in the ghost's chest. Countless clouds of black gas flew into the sky, turning into ferocious ghost heads. Bang! The ghost knelt on the ground and the stairs fell apart. The ghost directly fell towards the tree of life. "Be careful of the tree of life." Tang Jing cried out in alarm. Seeing that the ghost was about to land on the tree of life, the Empyrean fairy immediately withdrew the towering mountain, afraid that it would destroy the tree of life. The ghost broke free and waved its large hand, lashing out at Tianqianzi and the Empyrean fairy with its lightning whip. The two glanced at each other, deep helplessness in their eyes. They couldn't completely kill this ghost, and below them was the tree of life. In order to protect it, their battle strength was greatly restricted, and they couldn't use their fists and feet. "What do we do?" The two dodged the lightning whip and asked each other. However, there was a hint of helplessness in their eyes. This ghost's battle strength wasn't very high, but the key was that it was formed from ghosts, which was equivalent to an immortal body. This made them feel helpless. Tang Jing couldn't do anything, but seeing their reactions, he knew how difficult this opponent was. Suddenly he had an idea. "I have an idea, but I don't know if it'll work." "What is it? Hurry up and tell us." The two of them were impatient. "Beat him into a state of disintegration again, and then I'll use the sky-swallowing technique to absorb those ghosts," Tang Jing said. The Empyrean fairy subconsciously frowned and said, "This ghost is very strange. Even my stately painting can't do anything to it." In other words, could Tang Jing's sky-swallowing technique really absorb those ghosts? "We can give it a try." Tang Jing was ready to take another gamble. The two of them rolled their eyes helplessly. This brat's sky-swallowing technique was too strange. Perhaps it really could work. Alright, then we'll be in charge of beating him into pieces. You'll be in charge of using the sky-swallowing technique to absorb the ghost. The Empyrean Fairy pondered for a moment before deciding to take the risk. Tian Chanzi and Empyrean Fairy immediately launched a ferocious attack. With one move after another, the lightning whip couldn't even touch their bodies. Bang bang. With two muffled sounds, two attacks landed on the ghost's body. The ghost was immediately torn into pieces, and even the lightning whip quickly disappeared. Suddenly there were many ghost heads in the sky, but they quickly gathered together in an attempt to restore their original appearance. Tang Jing had been waiting for a long time. When he saw this scene, he immediately used the sky-swallowing technique. In an instant, another black hole appeared in front of him. The surrounding air was sucked into the black hole with a whoosh. The ghost heads seemed to feel threatened. They screamed malevolently and flew toward the black hole. Tang Jing was overjoyed. It seemed that it was effective. However, he was happy too early. Those ghost heads seemed to be bound by an invisible force and stopped in front of the black hole. No matter how Tang Jing used the sky-swallowing technique, he couldn't absorb them. What's going on? Tang Jing was shocked. Hee, do you think it's so simple to gather the most sinister ghost power of the 9 underworlds? You want to absorb these ghosts? Dream on. These ghosts are controlled by the world of spirits and souls. No one else can absorb them. The ghost's head gradually took shape. It opened its mouth and snorted with laughter. Tang Jing shook his head. These ghosts had such a strong background. It seemed that the world of spirits and souls had really put in a lot of effort. The Empyrean maiden was also enlightened. Her painting of mountains and rivers of the gods of earth and Vale could absorb many things, including living people and, of course, ordinary souls. She was still wondering why the mountain river map didn't work on these ghosts. It turned out that they came from the 9 underworlds. It was said that there was a mysterious place in the world of spirits and souls, the 9 underworlds. This was the most sinister and terrifying place in the world of spirits and souls. Even the world of spirits and souls were very afraid of it. The 9 underworlds would devour ordinary ghosts. These ghosts would be infected with endless ferocity in the 9 underworlds and lose their nature. Even the people in the world of spirits and souls would stay away from it. This time, the world of spirits and souls actually gathered the ghosts of the 9 underworlds to create such a ghost to deal with the Tree of Life. In fact, this was also a helpless move by the world of spirits and souls. The only thing that could deal with the Tree of Life was the 9 underworlds lightning, which was the black lightning from before. The only thing that could release this lightning was the ghosts of the 9 underworlds. This was the result of the world of spirits and souls putting in a lot of effort. Then they couldn't wait to use it here. Unfortunately, they were stopped by Tang Jing and the others. After hearing the words of the ghost, their faces changed a lot. They were unusually dignified. They looked at each other and couldn't hide the disappointment in each other's eyes. Seeing the ghosts condensed together again, Tang Jing unwillingly roared and said, "I don't believe in this evil. No one can hurt the Tree of Life." He activated the sky-swallowing technique like a madman. At the same time, a mighty vital qi rushed out of his yuanying and poured into his 8 extraordinary meridians. Even the 5-clawed golden dragon in the dragon seal let out a dragon roar. A burst of golden light burst out from his forehead and enveloped his whole body. Bathed in the golden light, his body seemed to have grown dragon scales, reflecting the sun in the sky. He was mighty and extraordinary. Suddenly the black hole changed. A stream of air swirled rapidly in the black hole. After a while, it turned into a vortex and the vortex became bigger and bigger. "What's going on?" The ghost exclaimed and looked at the scene in front of him in disbelief. This was because he found that his ghost showed signs of being pulled out. Tang Jing's eyes lit up. He also found a clue. His face gradually bloomed with joy. He laughed wildly and said, "I'll let you have a taste of the sky-swallowing technique, soul devouring." Under his desperate urging, the sky-swallowing technique broke through to the 3rd level, soul devouring. Recently, his cultivation had increased a lot, and he had never slacked on the cultivation of the sky-swallowing technique. All of this was like water flowing naturally. He just needed an opportunity. This opportunity finally came. He quickly broke through to the 3rd level, soul devouring. The so-called soul devouring, as the name suggested, was to devour souls. This ghost was condensed from ghosts and did not have a physical body at all. It was completely a soul. Therefore, the sky-swallowing technique was just right to deal with it. Even if it was a ghost from the netherworld, it would be difficult for it to escape the attack of the sky-swallowing technique. The ghost's cheeks twisted and became more and more ferocious. The 2 flames in its eyes stared at Tang Jing and said, "I'm going to kill you." A bolt of netherworld lightning appeared in its palm. With a shake of its wrist, it whipped toward Tang Zheng. "Do you think I'm afraid of your lightning?" Tang Zheng snorted disdainfully. The suction of the black hole increased greatly. Just as the netherworld lightning was about to hit Tang Zheng, a part of it was sucked in by the huge suction. The huge force dragged the ghost forward a few steps and closer to the black hole. It stopped in panic and looked at Tang Zheng in horror. It screamed, "How did you do it?" "I'll tell you. The sky-swallowing technique." "What kind of technique is the sky-swallowing technique?" "You won't understand even if I tell you. Anyway, it's a technique that can restrain you." Seeing that the suction of the black hole was getting stronger and stronger, it was almost pulled into the vortex by the netherworld lightning. It quickly let go of its hand and tried to escape. "Want to escape? It's too late." With a tap of his foot, Tang Zheng leapt up from the tree of life and chased after the monster. The black hole also flew with him towards the monster. The ghost let out a shrill scream. It suddenly found that its legs were firmly sucked in by the black hole. The huge tearing force tore off its legs and turned it into a ferocious ghost head. The ghost head kept screaming, but it was too weak. It was quickly swallowed by the black hole and disappeared without a trace. Seeing this scene, everyone was shocked. Tian Chanzi and the Empyrean fairy looked at each other and saw the shock in each other's eyes. When did the sky-swallowing technique have such a powerful effect? Once the sky-swallowing technique was used, the ghost was like a lamb waiting to be slaughtered. It was no match for Tang Zheng at all. This didn't mean that Tang Zheng's cultivation was very high. This was purely because his sky-swallowing technique had a natural restraining effect on ghosts. That was why it could produce such an immediate effect. The Empyrean fairy and Tian Chanzi were very clear about this. But seeing the ghost that they were helpless against easily defeated by Tang Zheng, the two of them still had mixed feelings. Tian Chanzi shook his head and said that he really couldn't see through this kid anymore. He didn't know when he would really be overtaken by him on the beach. The Empyrean fairy didn't say a word. She just stared straight at Tang Zheng. Tang Zheng didn't care. He kept urging the sky-swallowing technique. The suction of the black hole became stronger and stronger. In an instant, it tore off half of the ghost's body and turned it into individual ghost heads. Then it was quickly sucked into the black hole. The ghost with only half of its body left kept screaming, but it was useless. The world of spirits and souls will never let you go. They will kill you all and flatten the human world. The corner of Tang Zheng's mouth curled into a mocking sneer. "You can't even protect yourself, yet you're still boasting. I'll continue to suck. Suck them all in." Boom. The ghost was completely torn into pieces by the black hole's tearing force. It turned into small ghost heads and was sucked into the black hole. A vacuum environment appeared in mid-air. Even the air was sucked into the black hole. Chapter 957. Tang Zheng focused his mind and the black hole disappeared. However, the black vortex in the sky was still there like a huge eyeball staring at the three of them. The three of them stood side by side. Tian Chanzi carefully looked at Tang Zheng and praised, "Tang Zheng, you're really good at hiding things. When this is over, you have to tell me about the sky-swallowing technique. In my impression, the sky-swallowing technique is not like this." Tang Zheng modestly smiled and nodded his head in agreement. The Empyrean fairy also looked at his hand and said, "With this sky-swallowing technique, the ghost realm won't be able to use this method again." Tian Chanzi nodded in agreement. "Yes, as long as there is no such thing, the other people from the ghost realm may not be our opponent." He rubbed his hands together, full of confidence. "That black vortex is connected to the ghost realm, but we can't let it stay suspended above the tree of life. If we don't get rid of this hidden danger, we can't be at ease." Tang Zheng said worriedly. "Then let's check out the real situation of this vortex," the Empyrean fairy said in a low voice. She jumped and flew toward the vortex. A strong yin qi spread out from the vortex and shrouded her. If an ordinary person was shrouded in such a strong yin qi, they would definitely have hallucinations, with hundreds of ghosts surrounding them and gloomy winds howling. But for her it didn't affect her at all. She slammed her palm into the whirlpool, and a powerful force surged up and rushed into the whirlpool. Rumble. A loud noise came from the vortex. The vortex spun rapidly and shrank inwards, becoming smaller and smaller, as if it was frightened by the palm. But the three of them didn't think so. Their judgment was immediately realized. Suddenly, a ghostly claw reached out from the rapidly shrinking vortex. It was only made of white bones and no flesh. It was eerie and terrifying. It descended from the sky and grabbed at the Empyrean fairy. The Empyrean fairy's face was solemn. She didn't dare to be careless. She struck out 3 more times in the air, hitting the ghost claw one after another. Loud sounds rang out continuously. The ghost claw glowed with white light and broke a few of its fingers. It quickly retreated back into the whirlpool. Tang Zheng and Tian Chanzi hurriedly came forward and said, "Why don't we rush in? At most we'll just wreak havoc in the ghost realm. Anyway, it's not like I haven't done it before." Breaking into the ghost realm? The Empyrean Fairy and Tian Chanzi looked at him at the same time and exclaimed, "Why can't I? Do you think the ghost realm is a public toilet where you can come and go as you please?" Tian Chanzi asked back. Tang Zheng was stunned for a moment. The fact that he went to the ghost realm to save people was not announced to the public. Only Yi Xuanji and Yi Tianlei knew about it. Even Tian Chanzi didn't know. Seeing him so surprised, Tang Zheng whispered, "Actually, I've been to the ghost realm a long time ago." "What?" Tian Chanzi exclaimed. The Empyrean Fairy's eyebrows also trembled a few times. She looked at him as if he was a monster. Tang Zheng smiled bitterly. "Is there a need to be so surprised? You're not joking?" Tian Chanzi stared at him and asked seriously, "Do I look like I'm joking?" "Not at all." Tian Chanzi and Empyrean Fairy both knew that Tang Zheng wasn't a person who liked to play pranks. Then what he said was true. "When did it happen?" Tian Chanzi asked. "A few months ago." "A few months ago? At that time, how high was your cultivation? You actually broke into the ghost realm. You don't want to live anymore?" Tian Chanzi growled. He was very anxious and full of concern. "It's really not as dangerous as you think. The ignorant are fearless. The ghost realm is not as simple as you think. Because of the special nature of the ghost realm's yin qi is very strong. Ordinary people will die immediately if they go in. Even if the strong cultivators go in, they will be eroded by the yin qi. It won't be long before they die." Tian Chanzi said. Tang Zheng couldn't help but recall the scene at that time. The yin qi did erode his body, but he had the 9-yang saint body. The yin qi couldn't do anything to him. Other people's bodies weren't as lucky as him. Empyrean Fairy was silent the whole time. She only stared at him without blinking. Finally, she opened her mouth and said, "I understand. He can safely enter and exit the ghost realm because he has the 9-yang saint body. He doesn't fear the yin qi." Tian Chanzi was stunned for a moment. He suddenly slapped his head and said, "That's right. How could I forget this? You have the 9-yang saint body. We can't compare to you." Tang Zheng smiled and said, "Your cultivation is so high. You should be able to, right? Do you think everyone is as abnormal as you? In any case, I can't do it. As for Empyrean Fairy, I don't know." Tian Chanzi shook his head. He was ashamed of his inferiority. "I can't do it either." Empyrean Fairy said in an earth-shattering voice. "Really? You are in the demigod realm. Moreover, you have the 9-yang saint body." Tang Zheng was shocked. Empyrean Fairy lightly said, "It is because I have the 9-yang saint body that I can't go to the ghost realm. The yin qi in the ghost realm is very strong. It will explode the pure yin qi in my body. When that happens, I will die without a doubt." "Is that so?" Tang Zheng suddenly realized. He couldn't help but fall into deep thought. It seemed that he had overlooked a problem. That was, the Empyrean Fairy had the 9-yang saint body. Could it be that the 9-yang saint body didn't have the danger of exploding? He unconsciously stared at the Empyrean Fairy as if he wanted to study her thoroughly. Looking at his strange eyes, the Empyrean Fairy slightly frowned and said, "If you have something to say, then say it." Tang Zheng hesitated for a moment, but he still asked his question truthfully. Tian Chanzi also looked at the Empyrean Fairy curiously. Obviously, he had also thought about this problem. However, due to the dignity of the Empyrean Fairy, he had never asked. The Empyrean Fairy took a deep breath and said in a sad tone, "That year my father used magic to help me suppress the pure yin qi. Although the pure yin qi would occasionally explode and cause me a lot of pain, at least it wouldn't take my life. However, if I go to the ghost realm, the pure yin qi will definitely explode. Then there will be nothing that can be done." Tang Zheng suddenly understood. He couldn't help but sigh. It seemed that the technique of relying on one's father had been around since ancient times. The Empyrean Fairy, as the daughter of a strong person, could survive well even though she had the 9-yang saint body. If Tang Zheng hadn't met Tian Chanzi, he would not have lived long. If that's the case, then we can't go to the ghost realm. Don't tell me we have to be passive and wait to be beaten? Tang Zheng said unhappily. "Do you think this situation only happens to us?" Tian Chanzi asked in amusement. A big question mark appeared in Tang Zheng's head. He looked at him suspiciously. Tian Chanzi said, "Kid, sometimes you're smart but sometimes you're stupid. Let me tell you, we can't go to the ghost realm. The people from the ghost realm can't come to the human world on a large scale." "What do you mean? Are they also restricted?" "Of course, the yang qi in the human world is also fatal to the people from the ghost realm. Otherwise, why would the ghost realm come to search for souls in the middle of the night, when the yang qi is the weakest and the yin qi is the strongest?" Tang Zheng recalled bits and pieces of the confrontation with the ghost realm. It was indeed so. The people from the ghost realm came in the middle of the night. Because of this, although the ghost realm is very arrogant, it's not easy for them to really trample on the human world. It's just a matter of listening to them. Tian Chanzi said in a sarcastic tone. "That's not right. Since they can come to the human world at night, doesn't that mean they can also attack at night?" Tang Jing asked. Do you think this kind of war is so easy? This is bound to be a long and drawn-out battle. How can it be so easy to just attack in the middle of the night? As long as we delay until the day and prevent them from returning to the ghost realm from the ghost realm, under the scorching sun, the yang qi is strong. They're likely to be completely wiped out. The people from the ghost realm won't be so stupid as to make such a low-level mistake. Tang Jing nodded. It seemed that his thinking was too simple. The ghost just now was condensed from the ghosts of the 9 underworlds. It's very different from ordinary ghosts. That's why it can move freely under the sun. But after all, it's only a minority. Empyrean Fairy added. Tang Jing pondered for a moment and asked, "Will they just watch us absorb the original energy of the ghost realm?" "Of course not, they'll definitely think of another way. If that's the case, then it's necessary to go to the ghost realm. I won't be at ease if I don't thoroughly understand their next move." Tang Jing pondered for a moment and made this decision. Tian Chanzi opened his eyes wide and scolded, "Brat, do you really think your life is too long? Although you went to the ghost realm and came out unscathed, that was then and this is now. Now the ghost realm must be facing a great enemy. They won't let go of any movement. If your identity is discovered, who's going to save you?" Tang Jing didn't back down and said, "But we can't just sit and wait for death. It's not my style to sit and wait for the enemy to attack." "You." Tian Chanzi was so angry that his beard blew and his eyes widened, but he couldn't do anything. "Do you really want to go to the ghost realm?" Empyrean Fairy asked. Tang Jing nodded. "If there's no other way, I don't mind taking the risk. The Tree of Life is related to the survival of the human world. If we're careless and give the ghost realm a chance to destroy the Tree of Life, then it'll be too late for regrets. I don't think there's a chance to find a second Tree of Life." "You're very smart and even braver," Empyrean Fairy praised. It wasn't easy to get a word of praise from her. Tang Jing was happy and the corner of his mouth hooked up into a smile. "You're flattering me. But it's very likely that you'll die this time." Tang Jing's smile faded, and faces flashed through his mind. There were relatives, lovers, and friends. If this world was destroyed, then they wouldn't exist anymore. So, he didn't do all this for any lofty ideals, but to let the people around him live a good life. This was enough to support him to make this decision. "I know. If I say that I'm not afraid at all, then I'd be lying. But in life, sometimes we have to know that there are tigers in the mountain, but we have to go to the Tiger Mountain." Tang Jing's expression was resolute. Empyrean Fairy was in awe and praised, "Good." Chapter 958. The sentence, "knowing that there are tigers in the mountain," won the praise of the mysterious maiden of the 9th heaven. Heaven Monk swallowed the words of dissuasion that were about to come out of his mouth and faintly sighed. "I'll go down and check on them." Tang Zheng flew down from the Tree of Life and found Wu Junshan supporting Wu Junshan, anxiously looking up. "How is it?" Seeing him come down, the two hurriedly asked. "It's fine. The enemy has temporarily retreated. You don't need to worry." "That's good. Are you okay?" Tang Zheng looked at the weak Wu Junshan and hesitated for a moment before asking. "I'm fine." Wu Junshan quickly raised his voice and stood up straight, as if to prove that he was fine. However, this movement caused him to cough violently and fall to the side. "Careful." Tang Jing cried out in alarm, but his eyes were sharp, and his hands were quick as he supported him. Wu Junshan was supported by his son and finally stood firm. His eyes were filled with gratification as he said, "I'm really old and useless." "Don't speak. Let me check your injuries." Tang Jing noticed that the other party's condition wasn't so good. His vitality was very weak and obvious. Granny Li's previous attack couldn't be underestimated. I'm fine. Wu Junshan still wanted to show off, but Tang Zheng's hands held him down and he couldn't move. In the end he gave in and his eyes became much softer. He used to be the master of a sect with a high status. His words carried enormous weight and he was unparalleled in dominance. When had he ever been so soft? But in front of his son, all sorts of feelings welled up in his heart. Tang Zheng calmed down and carefully checked his injuries, only to find that many of his meridians had been broken. This wasn't a light injury but a serious one. If he didn't receive treatment he might even die. You call this fine? Tang Zheng asked solemnly. I'm really fine. Who knows how many injuries I've suffered over the years, but I've endured them all. Wu Junshan said indifferently. He naturally knew the severity of his injuries, but in front of his son, he didn't want to show his weak side. Back then he was weak and couldn't protect Tang Zheng. Because of this he felt guilty for most of his life. He did not want his son to see his weak side again. Tang Zheng, is Master's injury really that serious? Is there a way? When Wu heard this, his expression tensed up as he asked anxiously. His injuries are very serious. There must be a way. Then you should quickly treat Master's injuries. Nothing can happen to him. The Empyrean Fairy said. Tang Zheng nodded. Just as he was about to heal him, he noticed a figure approaching from afar. In the blink of an eye, the figure arrived in front of him. Was Lan Yu. Tang Zheng shivered. He remembered that she was chasing after Granny Li, so he quickly asked, Did you catch up with Granny Li? Lan Yu was somewhat dejected and said, That old woman is too cunning. She actually slipped away when we weren't paying attention. By the time I caught up with her, she had already escaped far away. I chased after her for a long distance, but in the end I couldn't find any trace of her, so I returned. She had always been worried about her son's safety. Seeing that she could not find Granny Li, she hurried back to see if her son needed any help. When she saw her son supporting her husband, her heart skipped a beat as she hurriedly asked, What's wrong? He is seriously injured. I will treat him. Tang Zheng calmly said. Lan Yu's heart tightened as she asked, Is it serious? Tang Zheng nodded. Seeing her nervous expression, he comforted her. Don't worry, I have a way. Saying this he took out a pill. 9 Transformation Soul Return Pill. It had the miraculous effect of reviving the dead. Wu knew the value of this pill and subconsciously called out. Wu Junshan blankly asked, Is this pill very precious? Wu hurriedly introduced the 9 Transformation Soul Return Pill. Wu Junshan firmly shook his head. No, how can such a precious pill be given to me? Little Zheng, keep it by your side in case you need it in the future. This injury won't take my life. Lan Yu wanted to say something but hesitated. She was both concerned about her son and her husband. For a moment she did not know how to choose. In the end she chose to stand by her husband's side. She gently advised, Little Zheng, this pill is so precious. You should keep it for yourself. Tang Zheng could feel a deep sense of concern. He would rather sacrifice himself for his own good. Although he used to hate his parents, ever since he came into contact with them, he felt their meticulous care for him. The ice in his heart had gradually melted by a lot. At this moment, his heart was even warmer. But he did not act like a little girl. Instead, he fed it into Wu Junshan's mouth and said, You still want to show off at a time of life and death. Swallow it. The 9 Transformation Soul Return Pill melted in his mouth. Before Wu Junshan could react, the pill turned into a warm current that flowed down his throat. But what was even warmer than the pill was his heart. Tang Zheng's actions completely melted Wu Junshan's heart. The corner of his eyes blinked, and he could not help but have a sparkling color. Tang Zheng saw through his mood and warned, Focus and calm down. Feel the medicinal properties of the 9 Transformation Soul Return Pill. Wu Junshan nodded heavily. He calmed his mind and quietly felt the medicinal properties. Everywhere the pill's warm current passed, it was like a withered tree in spring. His damaged meridians quickly healed and his body quickly returned to its peak condition. It was even better than before he was injured. His inner strength surged like the sound of a huge bell reverberating in his body. A ray of light burst out from his eyes as he faced the sky and let out a long roar. The turbid qi in his heart was all expelled with this roar. His dispirited state was swept away and his spirit was refreshed. Lan Yu's eyelids suddenly jumped as she cried out in alarm, Martial King Realm, he actually broke through. Broken and then rebuilt. Wu Junshan's body was on the brink of exhaustion. But when the 9 Transformation Soul Return Pill's vitality entered his body, The withered tree was immediately rejuvenated. He immediately broke through the shackles of his cultivation and stepped onto a new level. The roar stopped and he looked at Tang Zheng with a radiant face. He felt the mysterious feeling of the martial king realm and sincerely said, "Little Zheng, thank you." Lan Yu excitedly grabbed her son's hand. Her face blossomed with motherly radiance as she emotionally said, "Little Zheng, we never took good care of you. But you disregarded the past and saved him." "I really don't know what to say." Tang Zheng's expression was calm as he said, "It's just a small matter. Also, I have something to tell you." "What is it?" Seeing him so serious, the others curiously asked. "I want to go to the ghost realm." "Go to the ghost realm? Is it dangerous?" The three asked in unison. Obviously, in their hearts, Tang Zheng's safety was the most important. Tang Zheng's head flowed with warmth as he calmly said, "There won't be any danger." "Then we'll go with you." Wu Junshan volunteered without any explanation. Tang Zheng shook his head. "You can't go. The ghost realm is not like other places. It's not good for your body to go. Only I can go." "Then what about Tian Chanzi and Empyrean Fairy? Their cultivations are so high so they can definitely accompany you. At least you can look after each other." Lan Yu replied. "They can't go either. I'm the only one who can go." "Why?" Hearing this, the three were shocked. They realized that the situation was far more serious than they thought. Tang Zheng did not want to lie to them. This trip was dangerous and unpredictable. If something unexpected happened, he did not want to tell them lies in the end. Yin Qi has a corrosive effect on the human body. After a long time, people will die. But I have the 9 Yang Saint body so I can withstand the corrosive effects of Yin Qi. "What? No, this is too risky. How can you go alone to the ghost realm?" Lan Yu was the first to scream and stop him. Wu Junshan also nodded in agreement. "Although I'm not a cultivator and don't know much about the ghost realm, I can imagine the dangers of the ghost realm. If you go alone, wouldn't that be throwing yourself into a trap?" "No, you can't go." Wu Ji stared at Tang Zheng without saying a word. She understood him the best. From his words and expression, she could tell that he had already made up his mind. But the worry in her heart did not allow her to do nothing. She tightly held onto Tang Zheng's hand and begged, "Can you not go? It's too dangerous." Tang Zheng gently looked at her and stroked her hair, saying, "Although there is danger, I have to go. Otherwise, if we don't know about the ghost realm's conspiracy, we won't have any countermeasures. Then we'll just be passively taking a beating. It's too dangerous." Wu Ji shook her head. Her eyes were moist as she said, "But," Tang Zheng interrupted her and said, "I know you're worried, but you've been with me for so long. You should know my abilities. I'm an unkillable cockroach. I won't die so easily." Pei. Lan Yu suddenly said loudly, "At this juncture, don't say such inauspicious things." She and her husband looked at each other. They both understood their son's determination. This stubborn character was like Wu Junshan. Once he made a decision, even 10 oxen would not be able to pull him back. But when they thought of the danger they were about to face, the couple's hearts could not help but clench. At this time, Tian Chanzi and Empyrean Fairy also came down from the tree. Looking at the family's expression, they knew that Tang Zheng had already told them his plan. Tian Chanzi could not help but advise again, "Tang Zheng, are you really not going to reconsider?" "I've already made up my mind." Tang Zheng's answer was resolute and decisive, "Don't try to persuade me. I won't change my mind. Before we leave, I'll arrange a mission for each of you." "Tell me." Wu Junshan quickly said. "Granny Li has already escaped, so Li Xiaotian is in danger. If Granny Li retakes the Li Palace, then it will be very difficult for us to find the new location of the Li Palace. Therefore, we must take advantage of this opportunity to completely sever the relationship between Granny Li and the Li Palace. Wu Yuan Master's wife will return to the Li Palace. With your current strength, it will be more than enough to deal with Granny Li." Tang Zheng methodically arranged. Granny Li was only a first-grade martial king, the same as Wu Junshan. Moreover, she was heavily injured, so she was not their match. Although Lan Yu was worried about Li Xiaotian in her heart, she still agreed. "Fu Yao, you go home. The High Lord has already escaped. He is a ticking time bomb who knows when it will explode. Now that he has no way to deal with me, I'm worried that he will deal with my family. With your cultivation, going back to protect your family should not be a problem." Fu Yao considered for a moment, then nodded in agreement. Seeing Tang Zheng turn his head to look at him, Tian Chanzi asked with a smile, "What kind of mission are you going to arrange for me?" "You stay behind to protect the Tree of Life. Once again activate the 8 Desolation Array to guard against possible attacks from the Ghost Realm." Tang Jing said solemnly. Although they had analyzed that the ghost realm would not rashly launch a large-scale attack, it was still better to be careful. Don't worry with me here, the ghost realm won't be able to cause any trouble. Tian Chanzi patted his chest and promised. Tang Jing looked deeply at everyone and said, then I can leave with peace of mind. Chapter 960. Tang Jing did not choose to go to the ghost realm through the whirlpool in the air. He did not know what dangers were lurking there, so it was better to be careful. He took out a ghost tablet that he had not used for a long time. Activating his true chi, the ghost tablet immediately bloomed with a black light, forming a black door. Although it was still daytime and there was a scorching sun overhead, a gust of cold wind blew directly from the ghost gate, causing people to involuntarily shiver. Wu Junshan and the other two looked at this scene curiously, but the others did not find it strange. Tang Jing looked at everyone and said, I'll go first. Wait. Wu shouted and threw herself into Tang Jing's arms, hugging him tightly. Ignoring everyone's gaze, she kissed him and said, you must come back, I'll wait for you. Tang Jing brushed her black hair behind her ear and said softly, don't worry, wait for me to come back. After saying that, he hugged her tightly as if he wanted to rub her into his body. The others quietly looked at this scene and tacitly did not disturb this young couple kissing each other. After a while, Tang Jing released Wu, waved to everyone, turned around and walked into the ghost gate. Everyone stared at his back. Suddenly, a black light flashed and the ghost gate disappeared, leaving only a wisp of cold wind, but it quickly disappeared under the scorching sun. The cold wind roared and the sky was dark, like the sky before a storm. The yin qi in the air was like a blood-sucking bug, trying to drill into Tang Jing's body. He had already experienced it once, so he did not feel anything strange. The place to enter the ghost realm this time was obviously different from the last time. It was a barren land without a single ghost. Where should I go first? He muttered to himself, pondered for a moment and made a decision. This is a matter of life and death for the ghost realm. The ghost realm's 10 kings of hell have probably gathered together to discuss countermeasures. Fengdu City is the center of power in the ghost realm. They must have gathered there, so I'll go to Fengdu City to inquire about the news. He was experienced, so he began to disguise himself. Circulating his power, the yin qi between heaven and earth quickly gathered towards him, enveloping his body. All of a sudden, he appeared completely lifeless and sinister, making him appear no different from a normal netherworldly citizen. Netherworldly citizens were the lowest level of existence in the ghost realm, so they were the least eye-catching. Thus, it was most suitable for him to use them as a disguise. The last time he entered the world of spirits and souls, it was under the jurisdiction of the Chakravarti king. This time he had no idea which Yama king's jurisdiction he was in. However, if he wanted to go to Fengdu City, he could use the teleportation formation in each Yama king's city. As long as he found a city, he would be able to reach Fengdu City. However, he was in the vast wilderness, where there were few traces of ghosts. He didn't even know which direction to go. He could only choose a direction. Activating his power, he turned into an afterimage and disappeared. Fengdu Necropolis was heavily guarded. All of the netherworldly citizens were hiding in their homes, trembling in fear as they peered through their windows at the netherworldly operatives patrolling the streets. During this period of time, the atmosphere in the ghost realm had undergone a huge change. There were many more ghost messengers in the streets and alleys, and there were even many elite soldiers stationed outside the city. Everyone had a premonition that something big was about to happen, but as the lowest level of netherworldly citizens, they had no idea what was going on. However, everyone still had a deep impression of what happened not long ago. Ever since they heard that someone was causing trouble in Fengdu City, many things had happened in the ghost realm. The prestige of Fengdu City's Yama King was greatly challenged, and his position as the head of the 10 Yama Kings was almost snatched away by the other Yama Kings. After a long period of open strife and veiled struggle, the Yama King managed to retain his position as the head of the 10 Yama Kings. During this time, the grievances and anger in his heart were indescribable. He hated the culprit of all this to the core. However, the culprit had already fallen into the river Styx and was bound to die, so he had nowhere to vent his anger. At this moment, the anger in the Yama King's heart surged again, and it was getting higher and higher, as if it was going to jump out from the top of his head. The 10 Yama Kings were gathered, and the gloomy atmosphere in the main hall had reached a terrifying level. The Yama King looked at the other Yama Kings. These people had been fighting openly and veiled for many years, so he was very clear about the thoughts in each other's hearts. However, the crisis this time made the 10 Yama kings temporarily put aside their prejudices and work together. They did not hesitate to take the risk and went to the 9 underworlds to collect the most vicious ghosts in the ghost realm, and then refine that huge monster. This was because they knew how powerful the Tree of Life was. Ordinary methods could not hurt the Tree of Life, only the 9 underworlds' lightning was effective. They were full of confidence, waiting for the monster to return in triumph, but they did not expect that the monster would fail and be defeated so badly. This made them angry but also made them feel a deep sense of powerlessness. The plan that they were full of confidence and failed, so what should they do next? Were they to let the Tree of Life absorb the source energy of the ghost realm? Then, without waiting for the enemy to make a move, the ghost realm would turn from a large world to a small world, and could be destroyed at any time. As the rulers of the ghost realm, they certainly did not want to see this happen. In the main hall, all the Yama kings frowned and looked at each other. As the head of the Yama kings, the Yama king naturally could not sit by and watch this situation ferment, so he took the lead to break the silence and said, "Everyone, let's brainstorm and see if there is any other way." King Qingguang was a red-faced man with a full beard. He said in a rough voice, "We can attack the human world directly. Now that most of the cultivators in the human world have been expelled and the number of talents has declined, the ghost realm is unprecedentedly strong. I don't believe that we can't flatten the human world." The Chakravarti king and King Qingguang were not on good terms, so after hearing this he snorted and said, "You call this an idea? It's more like a rotten idea." King Qingguang was furious, his cheeks became redder, and his voice was like thunder as he said, "Whose idea are you calling a rotten idea? Don't tell me you have any good suggestions?" The Chakravarti king smiled coldly and said, "I don't have any good ideas, but at least I won't come up with such a rotten idea that is obviously wrong. If we attack the human world, it must be at night, but as long as the enemy delays us until the day, blocking our retreat, and making it impossible for us to return to the ghost realm, then there is a possibility that we will be wiped out. Then we can just flatten the human world before the day comes," King Qingguang said angrily. The Chakravarti king laughed. "You want to flatten the human world in one night? You are looking down on the human world too much. Although the cultivators in the human world have been expelled, the human world's technology is developing very quickly. Do you know about technology? What's so great about technology? It's just child's play," King Qingguang said disapprovingly. The Chakravarti king snorted and said, "King Qingguang, you have always been so arrogant and conceited that you don't even know about the human world situation? What do you mean?" King Qingguang was confused. "What do you mean? The human world's technology is very powerful, and many times it is not inferior to spells. If you want to flatten the human world, do you think you can surpass these technological powers? I dare say that with your strength alone, flatten the human world is just a fool's dream, and you might even lose your life in the human world." The Chakravarti king's words made King Qingguang furious. King Qingguang wanted to refute again, but he heard King Yanlua's angry roar, as if the roof was about to be lifted off. "Do you think it's not chaotic enough? You haven't found a solution yet, and you are already panicking. Don't you feel ashamed?" King Yanlua's words were like 2 big slaps to the 2 kings of hell, and they could not help but blush. King Qingguang's face was like a soldering iron. King Qingguang's intentions are very good, but the solution is indeed not feasible. The human world's technology is not to be underestimated. Moreover, with the help of mysterious experts, it is impossible for us to finish the battle in one night. We have to think of another way. King Yanluo made the final decision. The Chakravarti king laughed proudly and glanced at King Qingguang as if to say, "See, I'm right." King Qingguang was intimidated by King Yanluo's prestige, so he snorted heavily and did not contradict the Chakravarti king. "But there has to be a way," the other kings of hell discussed. Suddenly King Songjiang, who had been silent all this time, raised his head. His attire was very different from the other kings of hell, with a feather fan and a silk headband, and a pale face without any beard. He looked like a weak scholar. However, his influence in the ghost world was not to be underestimated, and was second only to King Yanluo. This was because not only was his cultivation high, but he was also very intelligent and resourceful. King Songjiang's life was very legendary. When he was in the human world, he was a mountain king who led a group of heroes in a rebellion and almost overturned the dynasty at that time. After his death, he did not reincarnate, but became a ghost citizen of the lowest level. However, he did not remain silent. Instead, he had a fortuitous encounter and started to cultivate. Step by step, he rose to power and finally sat on the throne of King Yanluo. He was a legend in the ghost world and also an anomaly. Moreover, he was very capable. He was the one who went against King Yenluo as an equal, and he was also the one who almost went to war with King Yenluo some time ago. He had always been dissatisfied with the current situation and coveted King Yenluo's throne of the 10 kings of hell for a long time. Seeing him raise his head, the other kings of hell subconsciously shut their mouths and looked at him, waiting to see what kind of advice he would give. Song Jiang waved the feather fan in his hand and said, "Actually, it's not that there's no way. First, we can continue to condense ghosts in the 9 underworlds and refine ghosts of the 9 underworlds. Then we can attack the Tree of Life again." Before he could finish, King Yenluo frowned and interrupted, "This method is not feasible at all, because the source energy of our ghost world is almost at a critical point. If we let the Tree of Life continue to absorb it, it won't be long before our world is downgraded to a small world." The others nodded in agreement, obviously not approving of Song Jiang's method. Song Jiangwang was neither too fast nor too slow. He didn't get angry and continued, "I'm not done yet. This is just a backup plan. Besides, even if we refine the Netherworld ghost again, since the other party can defeat him the first time, they can still do it a second time." Someone curled their lips. Since it was a bad plan, why bother talking about it? Song Jiang did not seem to see their reaction and continued, "I think the second method is the best." Everyone's interest was piqued. The others scratched their heads but could not think of a way, and he actually had a better plan. Could this be the suppression of intelligence? Chapter 961. Song Jiangwang waved his feather fan and swept his gaze across the crowd. He only said 3 words, "Dizang of Goguryeo." As soon as he said this, King Yama immediately stood up from his chair. The other kings of hell also subconsciously grabbed the handles of their chairs, and their expressions changed drastically. Song Jiangwang looked at everyone's reaction with a smile and didn't say anything. However, this sentence was like a stone that was thrown into a lake, causing ripples and circles and setting off stormy waves in everyone's hearts. King Yama looked down at Song Jiangwang and asked sternly, "Why did you mention him?" Song Jiangwang asked, "Don't you think this is a good way to break out of this situation?" King Yama snorted and said, "Good idea? I don't think so. This is probably a worse idea than the one before." "Is that so?" Song Jiangwang smiled coldly, "Who here can say that they are a match for Dizang of Goguryeo?" The other kings of hell looked at each other, but no one dared to say anything. A person with such a great reputation was actually able to intimidate this group of Ghost Realm lords. It was truly inconceivable. The veins on King Yama's forehead throbbed as he asked warily, "Song Jiangwang, what is your purpose in bringing up Dizang of Goguryeo at this time?" Song Jiangwang remained calm and said indifferently, "I am considering the survival of the Ghost Realm. Since we are all helpless, let Dizang of Goguryeo deal with the Tree of Life or those enemies. I don't think they are a match for Dizang of Goguryeo, and the Tree of Life is not a match for Dizang of Goguryeo." Someone pondered and nodded slowly. Song Jiangwang's words are not completely unreasonable. Yes, I also think it's feasible. After all, we have no other way. If Dizang of Goguryeo makes a move, wouldn't everything be solved? Looking at everyone's reaction, King Yama was furious and said, "Don't you know what it means for Dizang of Goguryeo to come out?" "What does it mean?" Song Jiangwang smiled as he looked at King Yama. "Song Jiangwang, don't ask questions that you already know the answer to. You know best what Dizang of Goguryeo advocates. If he comes out, can you still keep your positions?" King Yama asked. When the other Yama kings heard this, their expressions changed drastically. Many of them nodded, "That's right, we can't let him out. If he comes out, the ghost world will be in chaos and our position will be in danger." King Yama smugly glanced at Song Jiangwang, as if he was saying that he was right. Song Jiangwang didn't care at all. He leaned back and spread his hands, saying, "Then think of something else." I don't believe that with so many people we can't think of a way," King Yama said indignantly. Song Jiangwang didn't say a word. He looked at everyone with interest. He was resourceful. Back then he knew what everyone's reaction would be when he made this suggestion. However, he still brought it up without hesitation. Because there was no other way. This was the only path they could take. As for why everyone was so afraid of Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva, other than the fact that his cultivation level was the highest, the other reason was because of his views. He advocated for the equality of all ghosts. Since that was the case, the authority class in the ghost realm would naturally not like him. However, his strength was so high that no one was a match for him, let alone kill him. In the end, the resourceful Song Jianghuang came up with a plan. Finally, he banished the Dizang of Goguryeo to an extremely terrifying place. The 9 Underworlds. The 9 Underworlds was an extremely dangerous place in the ghost world. Malicious ghosts ran amok there. These ghosts had practically lost their ability to think normally. They only acted based on their vicious nature. There were too many of them, so much so that even the ghost world was helpless and didn't dare to enter. The Dizang of Goguryeo advocated the equality of all ghosts. Without a doubt, he would topple the 10 kings of hell from their thrones of power. Therefore, Song Jianghuang came up with a clever idea and proposed a countermeasure. That was to provoke him. Since the Dizang of Goguryeo was so compassionate, then he should first purify the malicious ghosts in the 9 underworlds. Only by purifying them would he have the qualifications to promote his home ground and purify the people of the ghost world. The Dizang of Goguryeo didn't know that this was a plan, so he readily agreed. At the same time, he swore that he wouldn't become a Buddha until the underworlds were empty. Buddha was the ultimate state of the Dizang of Goguryeo's cultivation. His cultivation was different from others. He swore that if he didn't purify the malicious ghosts in the underworlds, let them leave the underworlds and become normal members of the ghost world, and let the underworlds be empty, then his cultivation wouldn't be able to reach the most perfect ultimate state. For a cultivator, the pursuit of cultivation was very strong. For him to make such a decision, it could be seen how great his determination was. The Dizang of Goguryeo went to the 9 underworlds and never returned. This was because there were too many malicious ghosts in the 9 underworlds, and he couldn't purify all of them. This completely resolved the crisis of the 10 kings of hell. It was also because of this that he had the capital to contend with the king of hell. Many kings of hell and the power class were very grateful to him for this kindness. Not long ago they went to the periphery of the 9 underworlds to collect ghosts and found that the malicious ghosts had indeed decreased a lot. Obviously, the Dizang of Goguryeo's role couldn't be underestimated. However, if he wanted to empty the underworlds, it wouldn't be a short time. The other kings of hell started to discuss and proposed many ideas, but they were all rejected one by one because it wouldn't work at all. Everyone had reached a dead end. They looked at each other in dismay, but there was nothing they could do. Gradually, some people looked at King Song Jianghuang. A king of hell who was close to him understood and said without leaving a trace, "Actually, I think that what King Song Jianghuang said is not a bad idea. Back then, the Dizang of Goguryeo couldn't shake us. Today he may not have the ability to do so. Moreover, he made a heavy oath. The underworlds have not been emptied yet. He only left the 9 underworlds temporarily. After the matter is done with his temper, he will definitely return and fulfill his promise." King Yenluo glared fiercely at the other party and gave a look to the people next to him. Immediately, a king of hell stood up and retorted, "Then what if he doesn't return to the 9 underworlds? After so many years he probably already understood that we deliberately set him up. If he comes out, would he be stupid enough to go back? When the time comes you can't even protect yourselves. Then you will know that you were wrong." Seeing that King Yenluo's people had taken the bait, King Song Jianghuang put away the feather fan with a puff. Holding the feather fan with both hands, he sat up straight and said, "If the Dizang of Goguryeo wanted to come out, he would have come out long ago. Can the 9 underworlds trap him?" When these words came out, there was complete silence. That was the truth. The 9 serenities hell couldn't trap Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva at all. If he wanted to violate his oath, he could easily escape. How could they still have the carefree days in the ghost world? The other Yama kings immediately understood this and their faces turned red with embarrassment. After all, their happy days were all thanks to the charity of Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva. This was not a good thing to say and it was a loss of face. King Yenluo glared fiercely at King Song Jianghuang and said, "What if he didn't think it through before but after coming out he thought it through and changed his mind at the last minute? That's fine. Since you don't agree, then let's wait for the ghost realm's origin energy to be completely absorbed. Then one day the ghost realm will be annihilated." King Song Jianghuang shrugged and said, "No way." Someone immediately objected. Although inviting the Dizang of Goguryeo is a dangerous move, there is still a glimmer of hope. If we allow the Tree of Life to absorb our origin energy, then we will just be sitting there waiting for death. Wouldn't that make people laugh their teeth off? Immediately there were even more voices of agreement. It was obvious that they agreed with King Song Jianghuang's idea. The Yama king saw that the situation had taken a turn for the worse. He was gradually becoming weaker and weaker, becoming an isolated island. The anger in his heart could be imagined. He glared hatefully at Song Jiangwang, only to discover that Song Jiangwang's smiling eyes had narrowed into thin lines. Suddenly King Yanluo's heart stirred. King Song Jiangwang had always been crafty. Could it be that he had some deep meaning or some scheme? After all, he had never done anything that was thankless. However, King Yanluo could not figure out what King Song Jiangwang could gain from this. King Yanluo secretly shook his head, thinking that he had become a bird that was startled by the twang of a bow these past few years. He actually had to think about the deeper meaning behind King Song Jiangwang's casual words or actions. Wasn't he making a mountain out of a molehill? He must be thinking too much. King Yanluo silently consoled himself. After a while, everyone turned their heads to look at King Yanluo. After all, he was the head of the 10 Yama kings in name. In the end, he still had to make the final decision. King Yanluo looked at everyone's eyes. Although he was extremely unwilling in his heart, he had no choice but to compromise. Because this was the only way. However, he didn't think that this was a good plan. It was simply Song Jiangwang blowing his own trumpet. King Yanluo coughed. The great hall was silent. Everyone knew that King Yanluo was about to speak. Although I don't think that this is a good plan, it's fine if some people are blowing their own trumpet. But since everyone thinks that this is a temporarily feasible plan, we can give it a try. After all, it's better than nothing. King Yanluo made the final decision, causing everyone to heave a sigh of relief. Everyone was afraid that King Yanluo would not agree because of his face. If this stalemate continued, it wouldn't be good for the others. In any case, they were not fighting for the position of the head of the 10 Yama kings. As long as they could maintain their current positions, it would be good enough. Song Jiangwang smiled as he looked at King Yanluo. He had long expected that King Yanluo would make this decision. After all, it was impossible for him to go against everyone's wishes and remain indifferent. If he did, his position would be more easily challenged and questioned. As for the best plan, that was only for him, Song Jiangwang. But for King Yanluo, that was the worst plan. Song Jiangwang's gaze towards King Yanluo became more and more thought-provoking. It was like an eagle looking at a little chick. However, he quickly retracted his gaze and didn't show any abnormality. Since we have decided to invite Dizong of Goguryeo out, who will be the one to persuade him? King Yanluo looked at Song Jiangwang after he finished speaking. Immediately, someone understood and said, since Song Jiangwang is the one who suggested this idea, he is naturally the most suitable person to go. Chapter 962. The fact that Song Jiangwang plotted against Dizong of Goguryeo was already a publicly acknowledged fact. In other words, he was Dizong of Goguryeo's enemy. As the saying goes, when enemies meet, their eyes turn red. King Yanluo suggested that Song Jiangwang invite Dizong of Goguryeo out of the mountain. It was probably to deliberately make things difficult for him, to make him suffer in front of Dizong of Goguryeo and make a fool of himself. Moreover, the 9U Hell was not an ordinary place. No one was willing to go there. This was not a good job to begin with. Naturally, he wanted to make Song Jiangwang suffer. However, King Yanluo's words gave Song Jiangwang no reason to refuse. Song Jiangwang revealed a hesitant expression, as if he was very unwilling. King Yanluo sneered in his heart. Who told you to go against me? Now you know how powerful I am. With just a few words I can make you suffer. Even if you are resourceful, you are not as powerful as me. Seeing that the other kings of hell were looking at him, Song Jiangwang hesitated for a long time before letting out a long sigh. He seemed to be extremely unwilling as he said, "All right, I'll go." King Yanluo's eyes flashed with a sinister light as he said, "Song Jiangwang, from your tone, it seems that you are unwilling?" "No." Song Jiangwang seemed to be in pain as he said, "That's good. We're all colleagues, so it's only right for us to do what we can for each other. If we were to make all sorts of excuses, wouldn't we become a laughingstock?" King Yanluo took the opportunity to reprimand them. Song Jiangwang's expression fluctuated. He did not refute and listened silently. King Yanluo teased a few more times before announcing the end of the meeting. Everyone was waiting for Song Jiangwang's triumphant return. After Song Jiangwang left King Yanluo's palace, a smile gradually appeared on his face as he muttered to himself, "King Yanluo, do you really think I hate this job? On the contrary, I purposely made a trip to the 9U Hell." However, King Yanluo could no longer hear these words. Otherwise, he would definitely shout that he had fallen into Song Jiangwang's trap again. In the vast wasteland, an afterimage quickly swept across the land. Tang Zheng had been searching in the ghost realm for a long time, but he still did not see a city. All of a sudden, a group of ghostly citizens appeared up ahead. They were clearly not ordinary ghostly citizens, as they were all emanating an extremely sinister aura. They were riding on tall horses with weapons strapped to their backs. Wherever they passed, black energy would surge into the heavens, and a flag would materialize in mid-air, upon which a sinister skull could be seen. It's not a good idea for me to walk around aimlessly like this. Why don't I go up and ask around? Even if it doesn't work, I can just grab a person and force them to tell me the specific situation. Tang Jing thought silently and strode towards the team. There were more than 10 people in this group, and the tall horses attracted Tang Jing's attention. They were all wearing armor, but he could clearly see that under the armor there were only skeletons. However, they were still moving freely, no different from ordinary horses. Tang Jing knew that everything in the ghost world couldn't be measured by the common sense of the human world. After a few more glances, he didn't make a fuss. When he got closer, the horses let out a neigh and stopped. Immediately, everyone's eyes were focused on him. A loud roar sounded, and without any verbal communication, the group immediately turned their horses around and charged towards Tang Jing. Damn! Tang Jing shouted. What was going on? Could it be that his disguise was exposed? No, he was very confident in his disguise. But why didn't this team distinguish between right and wrong? They didn't even say a single word before directly attacking them? This was too strange. Tang Jing originally wanted to treat them with courtesy and say a few words, but now it seemed that it was impossible to convince them with reason. Then he could only rely on his fists. He couldn't just sit and wait for death, so he didn't care about exposing his identity. The first to charge was filled with an extremely sinister aura, and its iron hooves clanged on the ground. Suddenly, the horse raised its front leg and its iron hooves fell towards Tang Jing's head. Tang Jing lightly dodged to the side and dodged it. Bang bang. The iron hooves fell on the ground, smashing 2 pits in the hard ground. Whoosh. A glinting ghost head blade slashed towards Tang Jing's head. This time, Tang Jing didn't dodge. Instead, he grabbed the back of the blade and pulled, causing the other party to fall off the horse and fall heavily to the ground. However, the other party didn't seem to notice. With a fierce roar, his body emitted a black light, and a ferocious ghost head popped out from the hilt of the ghost head blade. It opened its mouth and bit towards the back of Tang Jing's hand. Tang Jing's pupils shrank. He let go of the ghost head blade and grabbed the ghost head. The ghost head let out a shrill cry and tried to break free from Tang Jing's hand, but found that it was futile. Bang! The ghost head exploded, turning into a cloud of yin energy that spread in all directions. Tang Jing snatched the ghost head blade and slashed at the other party's head. With a puchi, the other party was split in half and turned into pitch-black yin energy. Tang Jing frowned subconsciously. This team seemed a little strange. They were a little different from ordinary ghost messengers. It was as if the evil aura on their bodies was very strong. One could tell at a glance that they weren't good ghost messengers. Although one of their companions had died, the other party didn't panic. Instead, they attacked like a swarm of bees. More than a dozen ghost head blades slashed towards Tang Jing's head, covering the sky and the sun. The gloomy yin energy made one's hair stand on end. Tang Jing silently circulated his qi, urging the true qi to flow through his 8 extraordinary meridians. The gloomy feeling disappeared without a trace. Then he lifted the ghost head and charged towards the other party. This was like a tiger charging into a pack of wolves. Although the wolves were fierce, they were still vulnerable in front of the tiger. After a few rounds, Tang Jing had already killed several of them and completely gained the upper hand. However, these guys seemed to be unafraid of death and still charged forward without caring about anything. Tang Jing didn't hold back. He only needed to leave one alive. Moreover, these guys were so unreasonable. Without saying a word, they directly attacked him. It seemed that they weren't good people. Killing them could be considered a good thing. After a while, Tang Jing's opponent was left with only one who was still bitterly holding on. Tang Jing's ghost head blade was chipped. It was obviously not a good thing. Clang. Another crisp sound. Tang Jing's ghost head blade hit the other party's ghost head blade. Both blades broke into pieces. Tang Jing's figure flashed and grabbed the other party's throat, making him unable to move. "Stop or I'll make you suffer until you die," Tang Jing said lightly. "Ayo ayo." The other party cried out a few times. His eyes flashed with a dark light. He stared fiercely at Tang Jing. "Who are you? I'll kill you." "Hee, this murderous aura hasn't disappeared yet. You're in my hands now. You have to listen to me." Tang Jing sneered. His hand tightened. "Kaka." A strange sound came from the other party's throat. His face immediately showed a hideous look of pain. Tang Jing's face sank. Obediently answer my question. Where is this place? Which king of hell's jurisdiction is it? How do I get to the nearest city? Jia. The other party let out a sharp and strange laugh. You don't even know where this is and you dare to break in. This is the 9 Serenities Hell, the most dangerous place in the ghost world. 9 Serenities Hell? Tang Jing's heart moved. The ghost that attacked the Tree of Life before also said that he came from the 9 Serenities. It was said that the 9 Serenities was the most mysterious place in the ghost world. He actually came here unknowingly. You don't know about the 9 Serenities Hell? Who are you? Who am I? You're not qualified to know. Answer my question first. How do I get to the nearest city? Tang Jing impatiently asked. As for the 9 Serenities Hell, he didn't care at all. The other party didn't answer. Instead, he roared, no matter who you are, only death awaits you in the 9 Serenities Hell. After saying that, a black light appeared all over his body. He turned into a black cloud of yin qi and enveloped Tang Jing. Ha, you have a lot of tricks. Tang Jing was slightly surprised but didn't take it to heart. Although he was completely enveloped by the black yin qi, he pointed his finger. A purple true fire jumped out from his finger. Wherever the true fire went, the yin qi avoided it. Moreover, it let out shrill screams. True fire can not only be used to refine pills, but also to control enemies, especially against ghosts like you. Tang Jing's finger pointed anxiously. Balls of flames erupted from his finger. In an instant, the yin qi was wrapped in the true fire. It was like refining pills and the yin qi was like medicinal herbs. After a while, the yin qi disappeared. Tang Jing shook his head and said regretfully, the last captive is dead. Now there's no one to ask. Well, I'll continue to move forward. I'd like to see what kind of place the 9 Serenities Hell is. As the saying goes, those who don't know don't do it. He only knew a little about the 9 Serenities Hell. If he really knew the real horror of the 9 Serenities Hell, he would probably turn around and leave directly. Then none of this would have happened. The endless wasteland stretched as far as the eye could see. He walked for a while. In the distance he saw a bright light. The light meant that there were other people from the ghost world. The faint blue light illuminated the outline in the distance. It seemed to be a small village. There were a few low houses scattered around. Tang Jing had seen the prosperity of the big cities in the ghost world. When he saw this small village, he couldn't help but shake his head. It seemed that the gap between the rich and the poor existed everywhere. This 9 Serenities Hell was probably the slum of the ghost world. Must be very famous. In such a place, it was common sense for people to stay away from it. Tang Jing didn't take it to heart. He continued to disguise himself as a ghost citizen and swaggered into the village. The village was quiet. There wasn't a single ghost citizen. He shook his head secretly. This silence was a little strange. However, he was bold. He didn't take it to heart. He walked from the beginning of the village to the end, chasing after the light. Finally, he arrived in front of the light. The faint blue light was suspended in midair. As if it had a magical power, it firmly attracted Tang Jing's attention. When he got closer, the light suddenly moved and floated away. Tang Jing intuitively felt that there must be something wrong with the light. So he quickly prepared to intercept it and investigate. However, the faster he went, the faster the light went. After chasing for a while, he found that he was still 1 meter away from the light. No matter how hard he tried, he couldn't reduce the distance. In addition, he found himself standing at the beginning of the village again. It was the place where he came in. Chapter 963. Tang Jing stopped and the blue light also stopped, floating in the air in front of him. Looking around, there was no change at all. It was exactly the same as when he first entered the village. This was indeed the entrance of the village. He did not know why he returned to the original place. Tang Jing, you encountered a ghost wall. Chiyu's voice suddenly sounded in his mind. Ghost wall? Yes, it's very common to encounter a ghost wall in the ghost realm, but this ghost wall is different from the usual ghost wall. The one here is even more strange. This is a dead end, but there is also a way to break the situation, and that is the light. You can only catch that light and maybe you can get out of here. Chiyu said. In addition, there is one thing we forgot to remind you. The 9 Nether Hell is the most mysterious and dangerous place in the ghost realm. We are not members of the ghost realm, so we only know a little about its dangers. Let me remind you, when you encounter danger, don't blame us for not reminding you. The inner demon's voice also sounded. Tang Jing frowned. Although the two of them said it was serious, their words were not necessarily trustworthy. Tang Jing chose to ignore them. but the vigilance in his heart increased a little. Anyway, this trip to the ghost realm was not a good one, and it was normal to have danger. Since the ghost came from the 9 Nether Hell and was so powerful, would there be any discovery in the 9 Nether Hell? So, after thinking for a while, he decided to stay. Is there any way to catch this light? Tang Jing asked. After a moment of silence, Qiyu said, the things in the ghost realm are extraordinary and can't be judged by common sense. As for the specific method, I can't think of it at the moment. Have you never been to the ghost realm before? Tang Jing asked speechlessly. Why would I come to the ghost realm? Moreover, at that time the ghost realm was just a small world. What was the point of coming here? Qiyu asked. Tang Jing rolled his eyes helplessly. Okay, you win. He calmed down and did not continue to move forward, but stared at the light. Suddenly his mind moved and the war spirit sword flashed out, cutting across the sky. Without any fancy moves, the war soul sword struck the light, causing it to explode, turning into specks of blue light as if they were stars in the sky. However, these rays of light quickly gathered together and returned to normal. Tang Jing was surprised. This light was actually not afraid of the war soul sword's attack. What should he do now? Tang Jing thought hard, his gaze gradually moving to the side. With a thought, the war soul sword attacked once again, and wherever it passed, those were like tofu, all of them were cut into pieces, and finally turned into ruins, collapsing with a loud bang. There wasn't a single ghostly inhabitant in these houses, and they appeared even more lifeless after being reduced to rubble. With a tap of his foot, he immediately rushed into the ruins and swept across, leaving the ruins far behind him. He ran madly, but a moment later, he found himself standing at the entrance of the village again. Everything was as good as before, and even the details of the houses were unchanged. He had no choice but to stop because he knew that his attempt to break out had failed. This ghostly labyrinth was like a vicious circle. No matter how he tried to break out, he would always return to the starting point. He stomped his foot hatefully, and a large pit appeared under his feet. In the end, he had no choice but to focus his gaze on the light. He was afraid that the crux of all this was here. When he broke out just now, this light had always been behind him. I don't believe that I can't catch you. Tang Jing became serious. 4 symbols venerable, lend me a hand. Boom. With a loud bang, the 4 symbols venerable appeared out of thin air. When his feet landed on the ground, the earth trembled a few times. Move. With a loud shout, the 4 symbols venerable moved together with him, pouncing towards the light at the same time. The light seemed to have a consciousness and knew that danger was approaching, so it hurriedly dodged to the side. Its speed was extremely fast and it easily dodged Tang Jing's hand. However, the 4 symbols venerable was already waiting for it on the other side. Seeing that the 4 symbols venerable was about to catch it, it actually stopped halfway, changed direction and flew to the other side. This repeated again and again. Tang Jing and the 4 symbols venerable chased after it, but they were still unable to catch the light. However, Tang Jing was meticulous and clever, and gradually discovered the light's movement pattern. Suddenly, the light dodged the 4 symbols venerable's hand again, and flew to the side. In a flash, Tang Jing moved with lightning speed, and actually arrived at the light's escape route first. He stretched out his hand and caught the light in his hand. He was about to laugh happily when suddenly, his brows furrowed and he screamed in pain. The light flashed and actually disappeared into Tang Jing's palm. At the same time, an extremely cold aura spread from his palm to his entire body. In an instant, his body was frozen stiff, and a layer of ice slowly condensed on the surface of his body. He watched helplessly as he turned into a large block of ice, unable to move. Through the snow-white layer of ice, he could still see everything in front of him become illusory. That gloomy and cold aura made his true chi feel as if it was about to be frozen. Moreover, it followed along his meridians and arrived at his Zifu. His nascent soul emitted a purple light, and that gloomy and cold aura actually directly rushed towards his nascent soul. Yuanying's entire body blossomed with a boundless light, and this aura was kept at bay. However, the cold aura was like a poisonous snake and did not stop there. Instead, it looked around as if Yuanying was a tempting delicacy. Although Tang Jing could not move, his consciousness was still very clear. He desperately urged his inner chi, but he discovered that he was powerless, and his inner chi seemed to have been frozen. How could this be? Why is this ball of light so evil? He was extremely anxious, but there was nothing he could do. Qiyu, inner demons, quickly think of a way. Don't tell me you want to just watch as you die? Tang Jing was quick-witted and hurriedly asked these two for help. If I had a way, why would I take so long to tell you? Jianghu faintly said. The inner demon sighed and said, I have always thought that I was invincible, but today I understand that everything in this world was too simple. There are still many things in this world that I am not capable of. The ghost realm was another world, and its mysteries were far more complicated than they had imagined. For a time, these two ancient powerhouses had a headache. In fact, this could also be understood. Everything was evolving and developing. At that time, although the two of them were supreme powerhouses, everything was changing. The ghost realm changed from a small world to a large world, and the mysteries that evolved over the years were far from what they could completely understand. Hearing this, Tang Jing secretly rolled his eyes. These two guys usually boasted about how powerful they were, but when it came to this, they actually did not have a single useful method. This really angered him to death. If I die, you two won't be able to get any benefits, Tang Jing said without any good feelings. Of course we don't want you to die. This will not benefit us at all. Jianghu and the inner demons quickly said, but we really don't have a way. You are so smart, think about it again. Now you know how to say that I am smart. Tang Jing angrily muttered. Humph, I can only rely on myself. Others are unreliable. In an instant, his body was completely stiff, no different from an ice sculpture. What made him even more terrified was that this cold aura was gradually freezing the Yuanying. The purple light emitted by the Yuanying had weakened a lot. Moreover, there was no way for the true qi to be produced from the Yuanying. Even if he had the divine power to protect his body, there was nothing he could do. When the Yuanying was finally frozen, Tang Jing's consciousness was still clear. He felt extremely desolate. He had spent so much effort chasing and intercepting this light, but after catching it he actually ended up in this situation. He did not know how much time had passed, but he was on the verge of despair. This kind of torment was definitely not something an ordinary person could endure. Because, although one's consciousness was clear, they could not move. This was worse than death. The mountain was at the end of the river, but there was always a village at the end of the tunnel. When he was on the verge of despair, a warm feeling slowly emerged from his body. This warm feeling was born from his 9th major meridian. Moreover, it was like a spark starting a prairie fire, spreading through his 8 extraordinary meridians. Unexpectedly, his body gradually became warmer. Moreover, this warm feeling directly reached his Zifu, trying to rescue the Yuanying. Suddenly, that cold aura appeared again, intertwining with the warm feeling, both trying to destroy the other. After experiencing an extremely difficult battle, the cold aura was actually destroyed by the warm feeling. Yuanying thawed, and just like the repetition of all things, the true qi flowed, the warm feeling merged into each of his pores, and the warm feeling turned into heat. Not long after, he felt as if he was in a furnace. Every cell in his body seemed to be burning, and a scorching hot feeling filled every inch of his body. Ah! He let out a scream, but he suddenly realized that he could actually make a sound, so naturally he could move. Sure enough, he could move freely. He did not have time to be surprised because the heat was getting stronger and stronger, as if it was going to melt him. In such a short period of time, one cold and one hot, the two worlds of ice and fire, he was suffering. Oh no, that warm feeling seems to be the most hidden pure yang energy in my body. After my pure yang energy was neutralized by the purine energy, the root has been suppressed by me. But just now, that cold aura seemed to have touched the pure yang energy, so it rose up and fought back. Although he guessed this point, he found that the situation was not much better than before. Because once the pure yang energy broke out, he would face the danger of exploding and dying. This was the ghost realm. Where could he find someone to balance the yin and yang energy to suppress the pure yang energy? His cheeks were red, his body emitted green smoke, and his head felt like it was going to explode. But before he could think of a solution, he found that the situation around him had completely changed. Those villages disappeared, and the surroundings became bright as fire. Chapter 964. There was a huge pit in front of him. It was almost impossible to see the end of it. He stood at the edge of the pit as the cold wind howled. As for the village, there was no trace of it. However, he didn't have time to carefully observe all of this because his body seemed to be boiling. Although the pure yang energy had eliminated the cold aura, the aftereffects were not small. There were no other women here, only him. He had no way to absorb the pure yin energy to reach the realm of yin and yang harmony. This was really a torment. The pure yang energy has exploded. Jianghu, do you have a way to solve this urgent problem? Tang Jing asked. I still need to think about this. Tsk Chiyu, stop pretending. What can you do? The inner demons scoffed. Chiyu ignored them. After a while, he cried out in surprise, I have a way. It's a secret technique of the Ninely tribe, but I can only use it. What do you mean? Tang Jing asked suspiciously. In other words, I have to temporarily control your body before I can use this secret technique to temporarily suppress the pure yang energy in your body. Tang Jing's head thumped. This was not a small matter. If Chiyu controlled his body, would he still have a chance to regain the initiative? What if he was completely replaced by Chiyu from then on? Tang Jing had always been on guard against these two ancient experts. After hearing this decision, the first thing he thought of was this, so he didn't rush to answer. Seeing that he didn't answer for a long time, Chiyu quickly said, Tang Jing, your current situation is very dangerous. This is the only way to survive. Young man, don't listen to him. This person is too cunning. His words can't be trusted. You have to think carefully. If he controls your body, will he take the initiative to return the initiative? At that time, you will no longer exist and the owner of this body will be him. Tang Jing didn't make a decision. The inner demons impatiently persuaded him. He really couldn't help but worry. After all, he had to guard against people. Moreover, he knew how cunning Chiyu was. If he let him succeed, then he would have no chance to turn the tables. Inner demons, what time is it now? You still want to cause trouble? If Tang Jing loses the best opportunity and finally explodes, then both of us will die. Chiyu angrily said. The inner demons coldly smiled and said, if it's really so unlucky, then I'll accept it. I will live and die with the young man. I have no regrets. But if I let you take the initiative, humph, then I won't even have a place to cry. Chiyu gnashed his teeth in anger, but there was nothing he could do. He could only continue to persuade, Tang Jing, don't listen to the inner demon's nonsense. He's deliberately causing trouble. If we lose the best opportunity, then it'll be too late for regrets. Although Tang Jing's body was uncomfortable, as if it was about to explode, he still decided not to risk letting Chiyu control his body. He asked, can't you just tell me the secret method? I can use it according to the method. Only I can do it. You can't use this spell. Chiyu explained. Tang Jing coldly snorted, if that's the case, then forgive me for not being able to comply. I've dealt with pure yang energy for so long, I don't believe that I'll really explode and die this time. He thought for a long time and decided to fight. Besides, he also wanted to test the limits of pure yang energy. In the past, whenever there was a crisis of pure yang energy erupting, he would immediately find a way to absorb pure yin energy. This time he couldn't absorb it, so he wanted to see how long he could resist. Because he might face this kind of danger in the future, it might be beneficial to test it in advance. Besides, Chiyu's words were not very trustworthy. What kind of spell could only be used by him and no one else? Moreover, it was so mysterious that he really couldn't trust it 100%. At worst, when he really couldn't hold on, then he would use Chiyu's method. At least he could hold on for the time being. Seeing that Tang Jing didn't listen to his advice, Chiyu was flustered and exasperated. Tang Jing, you're delaying yourself, do you know that? Good intentions are treated as ill intent. You don't have to worry about that. Tang Jing resisted the discomfort and said lightly, ah, young man, good job, that's what a man should do. Besides, Chiyu isn't a good person. The inner demons were excited. Whether Chiyu had the intention to replace him or not, the inner demons were unwilling to take this unknown risk. Chiyu sighed for a long time, powerless, and sighed, if that's the case, then it's up to you. However, you've already broken the ghost labyrinth, it seems that the light is the key. Once you defeat it, all the illusions will naturally end. Tang Jing nodded and said, yes, everything was so real, I really didn't think it was an illusion. No wonder it could trap me so strangely. Chiyu paused and muttered, I just don't know who in the ghost realm set up this ghost labyrinth, it's really strange. Chiyu sighed. Tang Jing shook his head and said, no matter who set up this ghost labyrinth, this person must be a very powerful person. I have a premonition that things are far more complicated than we thought. This means that the 9 Serenities hell is more complicated than I thought. What, are you preparing to leave? Tang Jing's expression was mysterious and he said with a smile that wasn't a smile, why would I leave? Since it's so mysterious, then I have to find out more. The inner demons praised, a man should be a bit braver. Chiyu, do you think everyone is as cowardly as you, a coward? I'm cowardly? Chiyu's voice suddenly rose a few notches and he said angrily, if I, Chiyu, am a coward, then there are no brave people in this world. Tang Jing didn't pay attention to the two's battle of words. He put away the 4 symbols venerables and glanced into the pit. The pit was shrouded in a layer of black fog, and he couldn't see the situation inside. Snap. With a snap of his fingers, a ball of purple true fire emerged from his fingertips. The purple light didn't shine too far, and only faintly illuminated the area around him. However, he didn't hesitate and still took a step forward, walking into the large pit. There was a spiral staircase in the large pit and he walked down it very slowly. After all, he was worried about missing a step and falling down. That would be terrible. There was black fog all around him and it was as thick as water vapor shrouding his body. The black fog was formed by a large amount of yin qi, and it was incomparably dark. Tang Jing relied on the light of the true fire to move forward step by step, gradually passing through the black fog. Suddenly there seemed to be a faint light coming from below. He felt a chill in his heart. Now, he had a subconscious vigilance towards light, and it was completely because of the light just now that he was scared out of his wits. Don't worry, even if it's a ghost wall again, you have experience and you can still easily get out of it. The inner demons comforted. Tang Jing secretly nodded and what they said made sense. He walked down the stairs and the light became brighter and brighter. There was actually another world under this black fog. However, he could clearly feel that the yin qi below seemed to be different, and there was a lot more ferocious in it. No wonder the 9 Serenities hell is called a fierce place. This kind of ferocious yin qi invading the body is probably not a small matter for the residents of the world of spirits and souls. It will definitely have a serious impact on them. However, although the yin qi was ferocious, Tang Jing's body was surging with pure yang energy, and the yin qi couldn't hurt him at all. However, because of this, his disguise was completely gone. There was no yin qi on his body at all, and he was full of the breath of a living person. Ah! Suddenly, a mournful scream came from the bottom of the pit. The scream was so mournful that it made people feel as if they were in the same situation. Tang Jing was the first to be alert, and he was 120% alert. However, he was now multitasking. While he was trying to suppress the pure yang energy, he was secretly observing the situation below. This big pit was funnel-shaped, and the lower he went, the smaller it became. Moreover, there were many big holes in the stone wall and light came out from many of the holes. It seemed that the mournful scream also came from the holes. What's in there? He couldn't help but be curious. Let's go and see. The inner demons were also very curious. That's what I was thinking. Tang Jing moved forward cautiously, and finally came to a stone cave. He looked up and everything in the stone cave entered his eyes. He opened his mouth wide and a scream almost jumped out from his throat. Because the scene inside was something he had never imagined. A black pot with a diameter of dozens of meters was placed in the middle of the stone cave. Gurgling bubbles were churning in the pot, and hot steam came out of the pot and rose straight up. There were barbs hanging on the top of the stone cave, and each hook had a ghost hanging on it. The ghosts were trembling and struggling, but it was useless. There were also many ferocious guys standing around the big pot. These guys obviously had cultivation, but their strength was not high. They were only ghost messengers and ghost generals. In the eyes of Tang Jing, they were not worth mentioning. They let out ferocious laughter, and with a command, the barbs slowly fell down. Plop. A few ghosts fell into the black cauldron at once. The ghosts immediately began to struggle, like fish in water, splashing up waves after waves. But these waves were not water but boiling oil. Boiling oil. This word immediately came to Tang Jing's mind. This was a kind of legend in the human world. It was said that in the ghost world, there was a kind of torture called boiling oil. He had not seen it before, so he subconsciously thought that it was a lie. But now that he saw it, he finally understood that he was wrong. This was real, and they were actually putting ghosts into boiling oil to fry. Looking at the ghosts wrapped in boiling oil, after a while, those ghosts became even more ferocious and ugly. Many of their faces became pockmarked, and even half of their faces were gone. Even someone as bold as Tang Jing felt his heart tremble as he watched. It was hard for him to imagine what kind of pain it was. On the other hand, those ghost messengers were gloating, dancing as if this was a great joy. A chill went straight to his heart, causing him to immediately frown. He was about to turn around, unwilling to see such a horrible scene. Chapter 965. The scream immediately attracted the attention of the others. All of the ghost messengers turned their heads and locked onto the uninvited guest, Tang Jing. A living person. Tang Jing's life aura was too strong, the other party could tell at a glance and cried out in alarm. However, they were not afraid, instead their eyes lit up as they rushed towards Tang Jing. Tang Jing knew that he could not avoid them, so with a slash of the battle soul in his hand, the ghost messengers at the front were directly split into two, but the other ghost messengers still rushed over without fear, exactly the same as what Tang Jing encountered before. Strange, the ghost messengers of this hell don't seem to be afraid of death. He didn't hold back in the slightest. After all, he had clearly seen their vicious methods just now. He didn't want to roll in that pot of oil. Puff puff puff. Sword after sword, like cutting radishes in a short while, the only one left was the ghost general with the highest cultivation. This guy held a ghost head blade and once again launched a charge without any regard for his life. Die. Tang Jing roared, the battle soul chopped off his two arms, but he actually opened his mouth and bit towards Tang Jing's neck. Tang Jing speechlessly rolled his eyes. Was this guy a dog? Without his hands he actually used this method. But how could he hurt him? His large hand grabbed the ghost general. No matter how the other party struggled, it was futile, he could not escape from Tang Jing's hands. Tell me who is in charge here? He had no clue and did not want to tangle with these small fries, so he prepared to find the leader here. To catch bandits, catch the leader, it could avoid a lot of unnecessary time. The ghost general roared and angrily said, "The Nine Netherworld is a land without a master, it is not responsible to anyone." Tang Jing frowned and said, "Don't tell me you are in charge of your own formation?" The ghost general did not answer, but fiercely stared at Tang Jing and said, "You are a living person, how did you survive in the ghost realm?" "You don't have to worry about that. I've never seen a living person in the ghost realm. You will be very popular, haha." The ghost general's eyes burst out with light as he strangely laughed. Tang Jing was taken aback and asked, "What do you mean?" "Haha, the taste of a living person. We have never tasted it before. It must be very delicious." After saying that, the ghost general licked his lips. It was as though Tang Jing was a delicacy. Tang Jing felt a chill run down his spine. Did these ghosts want to eat humans? We've long been sick of the taste of ghosts, so a change of taste is definitely a happy thing. The ghost general happily said. Holy sh*T. You're a freak. You're a ghost cultivator, yet you're eating ghosts? You're eating your own kind, you know? Tang Jing could not help but curse. You can increase your strength by eating ghosts, don't you know? Ah, this is such a wonderful thing. You're a living person, so you don't know. The ghost general was not ashamed but was instead proud. Tang Jing shuddered. These guys in the Nine Secluded Hell were full of strange smell. They were completely different from other places and could not be judged with common sense. Humph, you want to eat me? You don't have the strength. Yes, I don't have the strength, but do you know how many ghosts there are here? How many? I don't know because there are too many. This is the Nine Secluded Hell's 18 layers of hell, the most sinister and terrifying place in the ghost realm. You actually broke through the ghost wall laid down by the Dizang of Goguryeo. Your strength is not bad, but you're still seeking death. The ghost general eerily laughed. That ghost wall was laid down by the Dizang of Goguryeo? Who is the Dizang of Goguryeo? Why did he lay down the ghost wall? When Tang Jing heard this new name, he was very interested. He asked Qi Yu and the inner demons in his heart, but they had never heard of it. Therefore Tang Jing was even more interested. The Dizang of Goguryeo is a loathsome guy. None of us in the Nine Secluded Hell like him. As for the ghost wall, that's his conspiracy. In order to prevent us from going to the outside world, and to prevent the outside world from entering the 18 layers of hell, he wants to cut off the source of our 18 layers of hell. The ghost general's eyes showed anger and disgust. Tang Jing's head moved. If this guy was so loathsome, then it could prove that the Dizang of Goguryeo was good. After all, most of the people who were loathed by bad people were good people. However, this Dizang of Goguryeo could lay down such a powerful ghost wall, indicating that his strength was certainly not ordinary. In addition, this ghost wall was equivalent to a barrier, preventing the 18 layers of hell from contacting the outside world, preventing these ruthless ghosts from going to the outside world to make trouble. Then why did I encounter guys similar to you outside? Humph, when the Dizang of Goguryeo laid down the ghost wall, it did not include 100% of the ghosts of the Nine Secluded Hell. The most important thing was the ghosts of the 18 layers of hell, so it's not surprising that there are other ghosts outside. The ghost general stared at Tang Jing like he was looking at an idiot, as if to say, such a simple question you don't even know, really shameful. Tang Jing did not care, at least this answer answered a lot of his questions. His mind moved and he continued to ask, don't you boast that you're very powerful? Since you all hate him, why don't you deal with him? The ghost general's eyes burst out with resentment and he fiercely said, "Who doesn't want to deal with him?" But his strength is really too strong and no one is his opponent, so he can do whatever he wants in the 9 secluded hell. Tang Zheng was shocked. In the 18 layers of hell there were certainly other powerful ghosts, but they were unexpectedly unable to do anything to the Dizang of Goguryeo. In the end, how strong was his strength Tang Zheng could not imagine. "You said he's doing whatever he wants, then what is he doing?" The ghost general's voice came to an abrupt stop, and he stared straight at Tang Zheng and suddenly said, "Are you trying to trick me? Stop dreaming." Tang Zheng helplessly rolled his eyes. This guy actually reacted. It seems that it is impossible to trick him. "You trespassed into the 18 layers of hell, you will undoubtedly die. Not only will your body be eaten, even your soul will be divided up by us." Listening to his sinister laughter, Tang Zheng helplessly said, "Since you are not willing to speak, then I can't let you stay." Boom. A flame soared into the sky, and the ghost general was immediately wrapped in the true fire, and in the blink of an eye he disappeared. Tang Zheng looked at the big pot of oil and then turned around and walked out of the cave. Walking down the stairs, another scream came from the cave, and with the help of the light, Tang Zheng vaguely saw a ghost messenger pulling out a ghost's tongue. The tongue was pulled out from the throat, and the ghost burst out with a mournful scream. Tang Zheng could not bear to see this soul-stirring scene and took a detour. This was the 18 layers of hell, and he would not be merciful enough to save these ghosts. Now he had a target, and that was the Dizang of Goguryeo. Finding him may lead to an unexpected discovery. The enemy of an enemy is a friend, and at least the Dizang of Goguryeo was the enemy of these ghost messengers, so he wanted to meet the Dizang of Goguryeo. The more he walked down, the more gloomy and terrifying Tang Zheng felt. Although his pure yang energy had already erupted, and his entire body felt like it was on fire, there was still a cold feeling enveloping him. He tasted the feeling of ice and fire, cold on the outside and hot on the inside. It was truly torturous. He walked down another step and suddenly, a group of ghost messengers came from the side of the corridor, and the two sides immediately met face to face. Along the way he had been very careful, but now he was still discovered, and immediately, it was like a drop of water falling into a pot of oil directly boiling. A living person. A sharp cry of surprise rang out, and then as if they had seen a supreme delicacy, the group of ghost messengers shouted, "Catch him!" So. One by one the ghost messengers charged forward without any regard for their lives. Tang Zheng helplessly shook his head, and now that he had not found the Dizang of Goguryeo, and instead met this group of people, it seemed that a fierce battle was inevitable. Moreover, this was outside and would definitely attract other people. Therefore he did not hold back and directly went all out. The War Soul Sword drew a line in the air, and fiercely slashed down, and a dozen or so ghost messengers were cut in half by the sword light that fell from the sky, screaming miserably as they fell outside. Tang Zheng's clean and efficient attack did not intimidate the other party, and made them feel afraid. Instead, it made them feel as if they had been injected with chicken blood, and they cheered, "What a powerful living person! After eating, my strength will definitely increase greatly." Tang Zheng felt a wave of disgust. This group of despicable fellows still want to eat him to increase their strength, then I'll kill you all first. He took the initiative to attack, and the War Soul Sword shone brightly, instantly killing all the weaker ghost messengers, and the remaining guy was the strongest ghost marshal. The ghost marshal opened his palm, and a small flag slowly grew in his palm. He grabbed the flagpole and shook it fiercely. Whoosh whoosh. A cold wind blew, and Tang Zheng felt the surrounding yin qi quickly gathering towards him, and his soul trembled as if it was about to leave him. Tang Zheng had the experience of fighting with Yama Seal, and immediately realized that this flag was definitely a treasure that specialized in dealing with souls, and could not be underestimated. I will first use the soul beckoning flag to collect your soul. With your cultivation being so strong, your soul and body must be very delicious. The ghost marshal laughed. Soul beckoning flag? Tang Zheng's heart moved. It was indeed the same as what he had guessed. Then he could not delay, and had to cut the Gordian knot. Thus, he roared and leaped up, descending from the sky, fiercely slashing at the ghost marshal. The ghost marshal's entire body released a black light, and with a wave of his hand, the soul beckoning flag expanded in the wind, and finally turned into a large flag. On the flag were complicated patterns that flickered with a strange light. The flag fluttered and an invisible force spread out. Tang Zheng's soul trembled as if it was about to leave his body. He was shocked and immediately focused his mind, operating his mysterious technique. he slashed down without any distractions. Bang! The War Soul Sword landed on the Soul Beckoning Flag, and with a poochie sound the Soul Beckoning Flag broke. The Ghost Marshal anxiously rolled on the ground, dodging the War Soul Sword. Looking at the broken Soul Beckoning Flag in his hand, he screamed, "Who exactly are you? Why are you so powerful?" Tang Zheng's cultivation surpassed his, so his Soul Beckoning Flag did not cause any fatal damage to him, nor did it attract his soul out. Tang Zheng did not reply. He raised the War Soul Sword and was about to give his opponent a fatal blow. Suddenly, roar roar roar. Roars came from all directions, reverberating in the air, layer by layer, like a clap of thunder exploding in Tang Zheng's ears. His pupils constricted as he thought to himself, "Not good." You're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.